This meeting is being recorded.
Yep. So now you have to, everyone has to say, got it, and accept that this is being recorded. Yeah, we will put this video up so people can watch it, although it's much more fun having it live versus Memorex, because then you can ask questions and go back and forth. So we will record this, and we will put the presentation up as well. But you really need someone talking you through this. It's a little bit of a dry presentation. There are a lot of videos. Okay, let us get going. So welcome to Smart Cycling. This is the first of a two-part course. This course, Smart Cycling, is the pinnacle of the regular curriculum for the League of American Bicyclists Smart Cycling Program, brought to you by me, Tim Wee. I'm LCI number 6033. I'm a league cycling instructor. And that means that I've passed this course with a very high score, both for the classroom and in person. And I've finished 24 hours of league cycling instructor training with a coach, and been assessed for my abilities to teach this. So it's being a league cycle instructor is quite a bit of work, but it is quite doable, especially if you've biked a long time. So Ramesh, hopefully you'll consider becoming a league cycling instructor after you finish Smart Cycling Part 1 and Part 2, and think that you might want to teach other people how to bicycle. We do have several million people in our Silicon Valley area that really need to take bicycle training. So we need a lot of instructors and help convince all these people, because becoming a great cyclist will make you so much better driver than otherwise. It'll be much safer as a driver. So this full Smart Cycling course, again, is in two parts. Part 1 covers theory and book learning in a classroom setting, which we're doing this online. And I have to admit, this class is difficult to do just purely online, because it was designed as to be in a classroom. And in a classroom, I can have a bike with me, I can have pieces with me, I can show them off as props. That's really hard to do on this little video that you are seeing here. And I'm going to show you, make sure I spotlighted myself. I'm going to spotlight myself so that everyone can make sure they see me, just in case anything else happens here. There we go. Okay, and Part 2 is done on bike, where we put everything into practice. And the on bike piece is, let's see, we get 1 or 4 people per cycling instructor in that. So you get very personalized attention. Highly recommended that you sign up to take Part 2 after you finish Part 1. We've got 1 Part 2 coming up in San Jose at the end of this month, and then 1 in Gilroy, so we can cover people. Unfortunately, we're not doing it in Toronto for one of the people who's joining us from far away, but muscle memory is extremely important. So actually doing the Part 2 in person on your bike in real traffic situations, that will help you immensely, and you'll learn a lot. Okay, let's keep going here. There we go. So first off, I've got a little video here so you can see that, yes, we are all human.
Bicyclists are people just like you. Like you, bicyclists have friends and family that care about them. Like you, people on bikes expect and deserve to arrive at their destination safely, every time. Although people on bikes may look a little different or may not always ride in a way that you believe they should, bicyclists are people.
I ride my bike because it keeps me connected to my community.
I ride my bike because it creates sunshine in my mind.
I ride my bike to deliver food.
I ride my bike because it's easy to get places on it and it's saving the planet.
More and more people are choosing to run errands and go places by bike. Some people ride for fun, and some people ride for function. It is important for you as a driver to safely share the road with all people on bikes. Remember to slow down and pass with caution. Drivers can avoid most crashes by simply slowing down. Remember, speed limits are maximums, not minimums. When passing, allow at least 5 feet of space between your car and the bike. This will ensure enough room for the person on a bike to keep traveling safely while you pass. Thanks for sharing the road.
So this particular video is actually from an adult driver education module that League of American Bicyclists offers. But I included it here because it's a great little video and helps introduce all of us, because we're all drivers as well as bicyclists for this adult education program. Sorry. There we go. So first off, about the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, the organization I belong to locally, bikesiliconvalley.org. We're a nonprofit, member-based organization whose mission is to create a healthy community environment and economy through bicycling. There are two key things we work on. We work with people, educating them, having rides, events, and turning them into advocates. And we work on places, trying to make better bike lanes, roads, and trails so that all of you have better places to bike. And we really need more members. So if you're not a member yet, I really hope that you will join, because we need people power to make our world and our local environment better. So we hope that all of you will join us, not just on our email list, but actually become a member and contribute to us as a volunteer and with donations. We need more voices to advocate for bikes. Okay. Also, one other thing is diversity, equity, and inclusion are core to everything we do. Bicycling is very economical, and it is accessible to basically everyone from any background. It's much less expensive than a car. So we really want to make sure that we have an environment that fosters a place for everyone to be safe, whether they bike or walk or drive a car. This training is funded by a 2016 Measure B, thanks to VTA, Valley Transit Authority. So this part one class, by the way, if you took it without, if you just had to pay for it, it'd be $100 to $150 just to take this particular class for the 3 hours that you're getting here. And then, but your taxes are paying for it. So you are paying for it. There's no free lunch. So thank you so much for showing up and attending. The part two class would cost $300 to $400 to put on if you had to pay for it. So if you sign up for part two, make sure you show up, because we have a lot of instructors that take part in part two. So thank you to VTA and Measure B for funding this, so you could all join us without having to pay yourself. Okay. I'm going to have a poll now, so I can see who more is in the Zoom, so all of you get to meet each other a little bit. And let me turn on my poll. Okay. And here's a poll going that should show up now for all of you. So please chime in here and just click on, and it should be multi-select. I hope that you as many options as you want on what kind of cycling you do. And just click as many as make sense for you. So I can get a sense of the type of biking you do. Got a couple more people who haven't participated yet. Give you a few more seconds, see if you can click on the type of cycling you do. Okay, it looks like it's stabilizing. A couple people haven't done it, but I'm going to end it here. And I'm going to share this with all of you. So it looks like a lot of people here are ride for recreation, which is awesome. Biking is a great way to exercise and see the world and have fun. We've got a number of commuters here. I commute by bicycle as well as riding recreationally. My commute is 12 miles each way to get to downtown San Jose from Sunnyvale. A lot of people shop and do errands on bikes. That is fantastic. I also shop on my bike. I sometimes, or quite often, actually, when I shop, I actually use my bicycle as my shopping cart. So I actually roll it into stores, load up my baskets in the back of my bike, and then roll out the stores. It takes some people aback, but it's most of the stores I shop in use shopping carts, so it's about the same size, so it works. And when I do a big shop, actually I pull a trailer, and then I will lock my bike up outside and roll the trailer in as my shopping cart. Bike touring, that's awesome. 9 people here do bike touring. I love bike touring. It's my favorite activity to do when I'm on vacation. I have bike toured across the United States twice. And they were both business trips also. So I had fun at work going across the United States. The last time was 2019. And I bicycled from San Francisco to Boston, 5,000 miles. I gave 254 talks about oceans, plastic, climate change, and kids. So yes, love bike touring. It's a great thing. It's a very inexpensive way to see the world. And you really get to see and feel and experience the world in a way that you just completely miss if you fly over it or drive. We're in your little shell. You just, it's a great way to meet people. Okay, mountain biking. Now that is one area that we don't get into much depth in this particular course. We talk a little bit about mountain biking, but this mainly is about transportation bicycling mainly on roads and paths and sidewalks, et cetera, and built environments that we've got. And I've got a couple of people saying that they have other types of cycling. If you're doing other types of cycling, I'd like to know what those are. Pop them in the chat so we can see what kind of other exist. And I'm going to stop sharing this.
Hey, Tim, are we doing Q&A session at intervals throughout the course, or should people, if good questions come up in the chat, should I interrupt you?
If good questions come from the chat, do interrupt me, Eleni. Thank you very much. And Eleni, here's an LCI also. Thank you, Eleni, for speaking up. So go ahead and pop questions, and Eleni's gonna be monitoring the chat for me because it's hard for me to pay attention when I'm presenting to what's happening in the chat. But yes, Eleni, interrupt me if there's a really good question popping up that we need to discuss based on what I'm showing on the screen. So thank you.
Okay, got it. Well, one question did come up. Are we counting workout, health, fitness within recreation, or?
That could be other, that could be recreation. Yeah, so basically I get my workouts just by going places. I don't do it just for being a workout. I'm a transportation bicyclist. So whether I'm going to the store, commuting to work, and or hauling things around. And if you've seen, if you've gone to our How to Carry Anything by Bike page, you'll see some pictures of me. Or you may have seen me at Viva Calle or at other places. I have a lot of trailers. Sometimes I pull all of them. I have 4 of them, an 8-footer, 6-footer, 4-footer, and a 3-footer. And I'm a train on the road, like a tractor trailer, hauling more than you can likely haul in your car. So that's a really good workout. So lots of different types of cycling. Okay, did I answer that question about other recreation? Anything else, Eleni, that I missed in the chat that I should answer?
Nothing in the chat, but we might consider putting that as a separate option in the future, fitness and health.
Yep, okay. Let's keep going. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the League of American Bicyclists. I'm a lifetime member of both Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition locally and the League of American Bicyclists at the national level. And since 1880, which is a very old organization, the League has represented bicyclists in the movement to create safer roads, strong communities, and bicycle-friendly America for everyone. In fact, the very first paved roads in the United States happened because of the League of American Bicyclists. Not because of cars, but because of bicycling. That's why we started having paved roads. And then the car revolution happened and took over a lot of roadways. So League of American Bicyclists does this through information, advocacy, and promotion, and work to celebrate and preserve the freedom of cycling brings to people everywhere. So I encourage you all, in addition to joining Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition locally, join the League of American Bicyclists on the national level. They focus on national legislation and helping us across the United States make it better for bikers. And they created this curriculum that we're using, and they train Eleni and I as league cycling instructors. Okay, the League of American Bicyclists, we have the Smart Cycling Program, which you're taking part in now. Bicycle Friendly America, where they rank businesses and communities and states and universities and how friendly they are to bicyclists. They run a national bike summit, which I attended this year remotely, and they also had it in person. They do federal, state, and local bike advocacy. And we actually, at Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, is a part of the League of American Bicyclists. We had part of our insurance through them, and as well as this curriculum. And they lead the Active Transportation Leadership Institute at the national level also. Let's see if I missed anything. Nope, looks like I got everything here. Oh, and then the Active Transportation Leadership Institute provides professional training and development to grassroots bicycle advocates as well as professionals. You can learn more about the league at bikeleague.org. So it's important. Belong to a local group, belong to a statewide group. There's actually CalBike, which we aren't talking about here, but I'll mention it, and the League of American Bicyclists. That way you cover all your bases to make our world more climate friendly and safer for everyone. Okay. Okay, so now normally we'd be in a setting where we'd be in a classroom and we get to know each other and find a partner. But instead, we're gonna have to rely on chat. So in the chat, answer these questions. What was your first bike? Who taught you to ride? And what did your first bike mean to you? Just pop in the chat the answer to those 3 questions so we get to know all of you. And I'll pop right. Okay, I'm popping in my answers to this also. They're my answers. I had a red cruiser bike. My dad taught me, and what it meant to me was I could fly. I just love zipping around on my bike. We got Mather type in. He did a kid's bike. Parents taught him. Meant getting bit by a dog. Oh man, that's terrible. Dogs do chase you when you're on a bike sometimes. So we've got a Novara as a first bike. Awesome. Taught himself. Tricycle 2 years old. Thank you so much for sharing all of these wonderful memories. Yeah, biking, I actually, outside of Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, actually, I teach people who do not know how to bike at all. They don't know how to balance bike. And teaching them to bike is one of the most fun things that I can do because they earn their wings and they learn how to ride, and it is just a blast. Okay, thank you for sharing what your bikes, how you learned how to bike. As a part of this course, now there's a smart cycling manual, which I'm not sure if you can see this. I've got some here with me. After you take this course, if you come to our Smart Cycling Part 2, you will get a real hard copy Smart Cycling Manual that also covers everything in this presentation. And you should read this manual because there's a lot of detailed information. So I'm going over it in the presentation, but then you can read it and then you can practice it at the Smart Cycling Part 2 class. So there's another reason to join the Smart Cycling Part 2 class. So the Smart Cycling program was developed by the League of American Cyclists and has been around for about 45 years. It actually used to be called Effective Cycling, which was developed by someone named John Forster a long time ago, but evolved into Smart Cycling. It has a lot of experts that designed this course over that time period. Yeah, it's a distillation of hundreds of years of cycling expertise to get to where it is. So do get the Smart Cycling Manual so you can read it and take it home with you and refer to it and enjoy it. And by taking our Smart Cycling Part 2 class, which will be in person. Okay. I've been mentioning there's two parts with the classroom, which has a basics, intermediate, and advanced sections to the classroom piece. And then you have the on-bike piece, where we go through basics and intermediate, and some of the advanced pieces we cover on bike as well. Okay. So some other resources, I'll be showing you some videos as part of this. On the League of American Bicyclists at bikeleague.org/ridesmart has a bunch of other videos. They've got a quick tip guide and other tips they cover. So later on, you can go to bikeleague.org and check out their videos. And also at the end of this, I'll be sharing with you some links for bikesiliconvalley.org. We also have a bunch of videos of stuff that the League doesn't cover as well. Okay, so for the basics, we'll be covering the bicycle, looking at bicycle maintenance, some talk about clothing equipment, and we'll be talking about handling skills, which I've got some videos for that. Unfortunately, I can't be in front of you on a bike. It's just hard to show in the video. But the handling skills part, you will definitely get in the Part 2 course in a major way. You'll be demonstrating your handling skills and practicing them. So let's see. Let us get going. First off, choosing your bike. So how much you spend is really up to your budget. You can get free bikes. Seriously, you can get a bike for free. Although right now they're kind of short supply, but on Free Cycling, on Nextdoor, on Craigslist, you can just ask people for bikes, and often people come up with bikes. In fact, people know that I bike a lot. So I was riding past my neighbor's house. He was moving and said, "Hey, you want 4 bikes?" And they're in crappy condition. They need repair, but I got 4 bikes that I now need to, gift to someone. And then on up from there, those bikes do need repair before I give them to anyone else. But I have people have given me, I've gotten probably 24 quite usable bikes that people just gave to me and donated to me, and I've donated them to other people. So generally though, a nice bike that you buy new from a bike shop these days would typically be $500 to $700 for a nice adult starting bike. You can buy, sometimes you can get down into the $300 or $400 range, but these days that's not buying a very good bike. Also, when you buy a bike, highly, highly, highly recommend you go to a real bike shop. Don't get your Walmart bike or your Kmart bike or, just a bike from Target or a superstore. Go to a bike that has a bike repair store because they know how to put the bike together and make sure it's safe to ride. I cannot tell you how many times people have brought these cheap bikes to me that something broke on it because they bought it online from, you know, someplace, or they've got it from a big box store, and the parts were just, they were dangerous to ride. I was really surprised at the bikes that some people are getting. So we'll be going over actually how to fix a lot of those issues, but some of them, since the parts are so low quality, they're hard to fix. So really, if you can, spend the money, go to a real bike store. They'll make sure it's properly maintained and set up. And then at the beginning, they'll also let you take it back for check-ins before you're totally on your own. And then when it does need maintenance, you can bring it back to them if you don't learn enough to do your own maintenance. We will be covering some maintenance, but there's no replacement for a great bike store. And pretty much all of the independent bike stores in our area are all excellent because they have survived through pandemic and through everything. And they're around because they do a good job. Okay, so first off, so how much you spend, that's the beginning range, and you can spend thousands and thousands of dollars. Generally, the lighter the bike it is, the more you'll pay for it. So you can easily spend $10,000, $20,000 on a bike. E-bikes also, generally the bottom end e-bike could be $1,000 to $1,500, $1,000 to $1,500, and then it goes up from there. Like a nice e-bike would generally be $2,000 to $3,000 for a good, nice e-bike. Okay, so that's how much you can expect to spend. Now, where you ride also determines what kind of bike you would want. If you're commuting or doing errands, just pretty much any old bike will do. And having a cheap bike is advantageous because it's easy to lock and not have to worry about it disappearing on you. Although bike theft in some parts of our area is quite intense. If you're in the suburbs in Silicon Valley, not so bad. Stanford, even though you think it's a nice school, big bike issue there. If you ride there, you get your bike stolen. And San Francisco and Oakland, and downtown San Jose, there are certain hot spots where a lot of bike theft is. So generally a cheaper bike if you're riding just to commute, just errands where it's flat. But if you're doing mountain biking is very specialized. A real mountain bike makes a huge difference. I have a real mountain bike and it just makes an immense difference climbing mountains. I have a dedicated bike touring bike. And my commuter bike, by the way, the one that's now my beater bike that I ride everywhere, is my older touring bike. It's like 35 years old now, really old. So it doesn't look like much, but it gets me around. It's very reliable, easy to maintain, and sturdy, and hauls a lot of stuff. So again, what kind of riding you do definitely determines what kind of bike you get. And then what do you want to use your bike for? Whether you want to haul a lot of stuff or you want to go bike touring, it's again, different purposes. Let's see, let me go to the next slide. So I've talked a little bit. So a road bike, they generally have skinny tires because they're meant to be on pavement. They're lighter weight and they go faster. They're very lightweight, lean machines. I've got a very nice racing road bike. Mountain bikes, sturdier, can have range of weight. Of course, the lighter, the more expensive they are. And you got shock absorbers in mountain bikes, thicker tires, so you can go over bumps. Hybrid and comfort bikes are generally sort of an intermediate bike. They tend to be less expensive and they're more flexible. I've mentioned electric bikes. So if you need to get to work without being sweaty or need to go further faster, electric bikes are awesome, a little more expensive. Recumbent bikes. Some people have back issues or other things with their body where riding an upright bike is not as comfortable, and recumbents can be very attractive to them. One of our former staff members was a big fan of recumbent bikes, and he rides a recumbent bike everywhere. Tandem bikes are awesome. If you need to have two people riding together, one of them may not be as strong as another person. So to keep you together, so you're on separate bikes and get separated, it's really advantageous to ride a tandem, but they are more expensive and a little more specialized. Folding bikes are an awesome option. I do have a folding touring bike that fits in a suitcase that you couldn't tell it's a bicycle suitcase. It's a normal suitcase. And also for if you do a lot of commuting on trains or buses, having a folding bike can be very nice because you can just fold it up, pop it in the vehicle, and not have to have it hanging out on a bike rack. And that can be very convenient. Some bikes fold quickly, some bikes fold slowly. The folding bike I have that fits in a suitcase actually does take me about 15 minutes to fully set it up to make or break it down to put it in the suitcase. But in a few seconds, I can fold it quickly just to fit in the trunk of a car or to carry it on transit. But to fit it in a plane, that takes me a little more effort to fit it into my suitcase. A note about folding bikes. And with any of these bikes, do test ride a bike before you buy the bike. Try it out. You may notice that folding bikes can be a little more wiggly. that folding bike I mentioned that fits in my suitcase were designed by a company called Bike Friday. They specialize in creating bikes that mostly feel like a normal bike. So they're very finely engineered so that you really, it's hard to tell the difference between a regular bike and that particular folding bike. But other folding bikes I've tried can be quite wiggly and feel much different when you're riding them than a regular bike. The standard regular bike is generally very sturdy and stable under you, but try out your bike before you buy. And that's why you go to a bike store also, because they'll let you try before you buy. Okay, let's see. Have we gotten any questions, Eleni, at this point so far? Anyone have any questions about bikes before I keep going? See a few comments up. Plus, what Good Karma, awesome place to buy a used bike. Community Cycles, another awesome place.
Yeah, we're having great chatter in the chatter box. Someone wanted to clarify if this course was designed by John Forrester.
John Forrester created the basis of this course, but it's been redesigned a number of times since his time. So when he did it, it was called effective cycling. And you actually, some of the more advanced skills that we go over toward the end of this course, John Forrester perfected how to teach those, and those are maintained in the course. And John Forrester used to live in Sunnyvale. I met him in person. I learned, when I first learned, I learned from someone teaching from his curriculum by another of the greats of the past history of bicycling, John Allen, who's still alive in Boston. I used to ride with him in his club. And John Allen actually wrote a lot of the manuals that people use in a lot of the states for bicyclists. He wrote the bicycling part of a lot of the driver's manuals in a lot of states. So cool guy.
I didn't know you'd had such brushes with vehicular cycling greatness. And we had another question about a common price of a used bike, but I think we've covered it in the chat pretty thoroughly, of about 100 to
150
bucks. You can get a really solid.
Yes, another good thing about used bikes, go to, if you're not an experienced bike mechanic, go to Good Karma, go to Community Cycles. You can buy a solid used bike there that is well maintained and properly maintained for you to buy it. If you buy a used bike from a private seller, if you know how to repair bikes, great, you can get great deals, but you may also get something that has some fatal flaws to it that can make it dangerous. So just be very cautious about where you buy a bike. Have it checked out by a real bike mechanic. And actually there's a bicycle exchange also in Palo Alto. It's another place to get good used bikes. They have sales periodically. Bicycle Exchange actually takes in donations, they refurbish them, they give them away to people who can't otherwise afford bikes through different programs. They don't do it directly, but they do it through some social service agencies and get people supplied with bikes so they can get around inexpensively. And periodically they have sales of extra bikes. So there's another good place to buy bikes. And thanks for putting the BikeX link in the chat. I really appreciate that. Okay, now fitting a bicycle. It is extremely important that you get a bike that fits you. Bikes are kind of a little bit like shoes. You don't want to have a bike that doesn't fit right because it'll hurt you and it'll be dangerous for you to ride. And it'll make it much more fun to ride a bike that really fits you. So handlebars can be adjusted, seats can be adjusted, but frames have fixed dimensions. You want to make sure you get the right size frame for you. And that depends on the style of bike and the style of riding you do. Usually the frame size is measured from the center of the bottom bracket, which center bottom bracket is my, oops, here we go. My cursor showing up here and not really. Wow, it's really hard to point. Sorry, I just clicked forward. I'm trying to have my, going back to this. My cursor really doesn't show up on the screen, does it, when I do it over the?
Well, we can see it, it's just small.
It's just small, okay. Yeah, so the bottom bracket is behind this person's thigh right here. And so the measurement for a bike, it usually goes from the center of this bottom bracket to the top of this tube. And again, depending on it's hard to say that what's frame size will actually fit you. You really should get on the bike because different kinds of bikes have different frame measurements. A mountain bike in particular is very different from a road bike. So they'll be two totally different measurements. So the best thing is to get on the bike or to go to a bike shop and have them do a bike fit for you for the type of riding, the type of bike you have. That's the best deal for you. Let's see. Okay, fitting a bike. So you should straddle the bike and make sure that you can straddle it ahead of the bike seat so that you can clear the top bar. And you can lift the front and rear wheels off the ground. There should be 1 or 2 inches of space between you and the top bar of the bike. And so if you lift the bike up as high as you can while you're straddling it, then there'd be 1 or 2 inches of space between the wheels of the floor or for a road bike. And there's typically 3 to 4 inches of clearance for a hybrid or a mountain bike. Okay, here are all the parts of a bike. So we have the saddle, which is where you sit, very important part. And you may find that you need to switch saddles from the saddle that you bought to a saddle that's really comfortable for your particular anatomy. That's the spot that a lot of people customize the saddle. Holding up the saddle is a seat post, and with a seat post collar that clamps it into the frame. This is a traditional diamond frame. This is actually a hybrid or low-end mountain bike that you're seeing here. We got the frame, got the headset at the front where the handlebars are attached. And below the headset, there's a fork, and this you see there are shock absorbers in this particular fork. Connected to the headset, the stem, which holds the handlebars and handlebar grips. The handlebars will have the brake levers and shifters there, so you can get to them with your hand. There'll be cables and housing for the shifters and the brakes. On the front, you've got front brakes. In this case, this bike has rim brakes that have the braking surface as the rim of the wheel in the front. There are also disc brakes, which would have a disc around the front hub. This particular bike also has a quick release axle. We'll be talking more about quick releases. Higher end bikes tend to have quick releases to allow your front and possibly rear wheel to pop on and off more quickly. A lot of people like taking the front wheel off so you can put your bike in a car more quickly, or to use it in particular kinds of bike racks. Then in the drivetrain space, down at the bottom bracket area, the bottom of the frame, we've got a front derailleur attached to the seat tube here. We've got the chain rings that are part of the crank. They're the crank arms and pedals attached to the crank arms. We've got a chain, which is the greasy, messiest part of the bicycle typically. This is a metal chain. And now these days we do have carbon fiber belts, which you are kind of from the automotive industry to a large extent, where they were perfected. And they're a great option, although they don't have a derailleur like this bike has. They've got different shifting mechanisms, but they're great because they're quiet. They don't get greasy. They last a long time, but they are expensive, more expensive than a chain. On this particular bike, we've got a cassette in the back where the cogs are, and there's a rear derailleur back here that shifts the chain across the different cogs. And then they've got the wheels with, you got hubs, the middle, spokes, got the rim. Typically an alloy rim is the best. Avoid steel rims, they do not break, with rim brakes at least. They've got a tire on the outside, and inside that tire, typically you've got a tube, which you can repair. You've got a rim strip inside that helps shield the tire tube from the spoke nipples that are poking through this rim. And there's a valve here someplace. I'm not seeing it right away on this picture on either one. I'm having trouble seeing where the valve is. These days, you also can get tubeless tires on bikes. A tubeless tire has a sealant inside of it. It's more like a car tire in a way, because car tires no longer have tubes in them, in most cars at least. But a car tire is big, heavy, and thick. And then the rim is big, heavy, and thick. And so between the two of them, they can keep all the air inside. With a bicycle wheel, you've got all of these spoke holes that make that through some kinds of rims can make it hard to retain pressure. But they've got special kind of rims that are designed for tubeless tires, so you don't need a tube. And the advantage there is if you get a flat, it self-repairs, which is very cool, especially if you ride where there are a lot of thorns. Some mountain bikers like this, and some road bikers like this. As a bicycle tourist, I tend to avoid the tubeless tires because certain kinds of repairs, when you have the tubeless tires with the sealant inside, can get really, really messy. And we have to do field repairs. It's just yucky and hard to fix it. But you do tend to get more flats with a regular tube than a tubeless tire. Okay, so I've gone into some detail there about parts of the bike and some options. Do we have any questions about parts of the bike that people have before I move on? Okay, not seeing any questions right now. We'll keep going. Okay, so adjusting your bike, you need to make sure the saddle is at the right height. It should be high enough so that there's a slight bend in your knee when the pedal is all the way down. Now, measuring this when you're stationary on a bike is hard because it's hard to balance on a saddle that's very high. My saddle is so high that it's hard for me to touch the ground when I stay in my saddle. So if I need to actually check the height when I'm in my saddle, my seat saddle, I have to hold on to something or hold on to somebody or have someone hold the bike for me. Like hold a railing or be up against a wall. So up against a wall, I can sit in my saddle and I can rotate the pedals down and then see if I got a slight bend in my knee when the pedal is all the way down with the ball of my foot over the center spindle of the pedal. Another thing you can do is if you put the heel of your foot on the pedal, then your leg should go fully straight when you're seated in the saddle and the pedal is all the way at the very bottom. Now, when the pedal is at the very bottom, there's still a gap between that and the road of a few inches. That's why it's hard when the saddle is the right height for you to reach the ground when you're in your saddle. And we'll be getting to that, but typically when you stop, you'll get out of the saddle when you stop. So you don't stop when you're on the saddle. Okay, something else is when you're pedaling, your front knee should be above the center of the pedal when the pedal is all the way forward. So if you do a full rotation and your ball of your foot is on the pedal, then as you push down, you see the knee should be aligned with the center of the pedal as you're pedaling when the pedal is forward most.
Tim, we did have a question. Someone wants it quantified. How slight is slight? I think they're talking about the slight bend in your knee.
Comfortable. It's a pretty slight bend. So your leg's not fully straight, but there's a slight bend. You'll see in some of these videos, you'll see it happen. And then if you put the heel of your foot again on the pedal, then your leg will be fully straight. So you could use that as a quick metric. Get your foot like fully straight, but you never pedal with your heel on the pedal. That would be really uncomfortable. Having the ball of your foot on the center of the pedal is the best technique. And the reason we want the leg to extend fully when you're in your saddle, so you get full power out of your leg. When you walk around, you typically don't walk with your legs really bent over. Your legs are fairly straight because it's easier for you. The same thing goes for pedaling on your bike. You want your legs fairly straight so it's more comfortable and get a lot more power. A lot of beginning cyclists will have their seat quite low so they can reach the ground very easily. But when they pedal, then their legs are left very bent and they'll get tired much, much more quickly than if they had their seat at the proper height. But when you're beginning, you're still getting used to it. You need to put your feet down more easily. And then as you become a more advanced cyclist, which hopefully most of you here are becoming more advanced cyclists, then you get the saddle to the fully correct height. And we'll check this in the part 2 of Smart Cycling as well.
Yep, and that's definitely something at a professional bike fitting. They'll put angles to it, measurements, yep, degrees, things like that.
But again, if you are a beginning cyclist here, you may be riding with your seat lower because you're not comfortable with your seat higher yet. But as you get more and more experience, you get more comfortable with your seat going higher because you'll learn how to get off your seat when you stop, which we will go over as part of this course.
Is there any right saddle angle, like the pitch, whether you like it pitched forward or pitched up? Or
that's actually the next slide. Thank you for bringing that up. So generally the saddle should be level, not angled up or down, but they can be a little bit of a personal preference a bit because some anatomy is sometimes different. So first try just having it saddle level. And also you can move the saddle forward and back on its rails where it gets clamped to the seat post. So you can adjust that around depending on your body geometry. And that's, again, where a bike shop can help you make sure that everything fits correctly with a professional fit, which they typically charge $100 to $200 to $300 even for a really nice professional fit kit, depending on who you have doing your fit with your bike. And so I wouldn't spend that much money unless you're getting a super, super nice bike. It's a lot of money. So yes, adjust the seat that connects with the seat post and saddle. And so you want to make sure it's as comfortable as possible. So when you ride a lot, so I do a lot of long distance bicycle touring while riding like 5,000 miles over the course of 3 months. And I've got to have a bike that just fits just right so that parts of my body don't fail. It's really, bicycle fit is really important. And I see some comments about Schwalbe marathon tires. They're expensive, but yes, they are great. And that's what I use on my touring bikes. I love Schwalbe marathon tires. They're awesome.
Yeah, the only time I had one of those fail was I wasn't paying attention and rode right over a broken half of a bottle and it did gut the tire.
Yeah. They're not completely bomb-proof because
No.
I've gone across stuff that have taken out the marathons also, but they are very sturdy tires. You get what you pay for, basically.
I did get to see that blue sponge that's supposedly in the tire protecting us
Yep.
from flats.
You do. And I see someone mentioning Tannis, which is a airless tire. I mean, that you can't go flat because they're just solid.
Yeah,
yeah,
that was me. there's two kinds from Tanis. There's an insert that you basically downsize the tube. So the foam insert takes up some space. So you put a smaller tube in. And that's what I went with because I'm not ready to go tubeless. But yeah, those give you like a good 15 millimeters extra of puncture protection. They're pretty good.
Yeah. And then there's a version, that you can get rid of the tube entirely, but it affects the ride somewhat. So it's not as soft and it's a little heavier. So that's trade-offs. Okay. Handlebars and stem. So handlebars are typically, for average bikes, about as wide as your shoulders. But if you get certain mountain bikes and get somewhat wider, and some other styles of bikes and get super wide handlebars, touring bikes and road bikes tend to be a little narrower, closer in because they're more streamlined. Again, you adjust them so you have a slight bend in your elbow when you're riding comfortably. Because if you lock your hands, you lock your arms out, it just doesn't very good shock absorption. And then you get stiffened up. So you want a little bit of movement. And you just need to make sure it's comfortable. A lot of different body types. Some people like being more upright. Some people like being more bent over. It's really up to your fitness level and how your body is just built. And different people are built differently. And so, some people like riding some styles of bikes, and some people don't like riding other styles of bikes. With my bikes, I generally like a touring bike with ram style handlebars that curl down, so I can be up on top or down below. So I can be streamlined when I'm streamlined, or I can be more upright sometimes. As a bicycle tourist, you need to vary your body position periodically because you'll get cramps, or you get hand issues, or you get leg issues, or you get bottom issues. You just stay in exactly the same position all the time. You need to spread the load across all of your different body parts. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I asked about saddle pitch, because I've been trying to find a way to not have my bum hurt, and then what happened was I started making my shoulders and arms hurt because I moved the pressure forward by pitching the saddle. And it's a tug of war.
Yeah, so we get to this a little bit in the bike touring section, but I'm going to mention it here since you're talking about saddles. A Brooks saddle that's all leather, if you do a lot of long distance riding, is awesome because the leather just gives the right amount. It's firm yet gives, but they are expensive. A Brooks leather saddle will run $100 to $200 just for the saddle alone. And you need to maintain it properly also because it's leather, so you can't let it get super wet like the rain to get a saddle cover for when it rains. But bicycle tourists swear by the Brooks saddles because they just are so much more comfortable. But they're heavier, but it's a trade-off. So I wouldn't race with one. I'd get a lightweight saddle, but in a race you're typically not riding for like 100 miles and just the whole day long. It may ride 100 miles, but it'd be very much quicker on a super lightweight bike. So again, in general, you're trying to make sure everything's comfortable for you. Okay, and now we've got a video we're going to play here about some more fitting and adjusting.
It's important to make sure your bike fits you properly. While your seat can be adjusted, frames have fixed dimensions, so be sure to find the right size frame for you. If the frame has a full top tube, straddle the bike and stand in front of the seat. If it is a road bike, there should be 1 to 2 inches of clearance between you and the bike. For a mountain or hybrid bike, there should be 3 to 4 inches. For step-through bikes or bikes with a slanting top tube, test the frame by pushing one pedal all the way down while sitting on the seat. Your knee should have a slight bend in it. The seat post can be adjusted, but should be in the middle of the range, not fully extended or touching the frame. Regardless of your frame size, this test will also make sure your seat is at the right height for a comfortable ride. Tip: mark your seat height with a permanent marker, so if someone borrows your bike, you can easily move your seat post back to your ideal position. The League of American Bicyclists, creating better bike education for everyone.
Okay, there's a review and a few new other tips I didn't cover. Whoops. Okay. Next up, we want to make sure that your bike is safe to ride before each time you take it for a ride. So there's this technique called ABC Quick Check, which is to perform a basic bike check before you ride your bike each time. Make sure it's in good condition. And keeping your bike well maintained will prevent crashes and make your riding experience much, much happier. So with, oops, come on, there we go. So with ABC Quick Check, A is for air, where you check sure that the air in your tires is appropriate, and you check the wheels, make sure the wheels are on solid. B is for brakes, where you check over the brakes. I'll have a video come up shortly that'll show you all this. C is for cranks, chain, cassette, cogs, all the drive chain pieces. Quick is for quick releases, where you make sure the quick releases are properly secured so your wheel doesn't fall off or your seat doesn't fall down. And check is for doing a quick check, just a short ride, and also maybe dropping the bike briefly to see that everything, you don't hear new sounds. And so I'm going to pop over here to this video. Come on. There we go.
Get ready to ride. This video covers the ABC Quick Check and offers a few tips when riding an electric assist bike. Start every ride with an ABC Quick Check to make sure your bike is in a safe working condition. Let's break it down. A is for air. Push on your tires. Each one should be firm when you press on them. Tires should be hard to the touch. If they give way to your pressure, they need to be inflated. After you have inflated your tires, check for cracks, bald spots, or loose threads. Any of these are indications of extreme wear, and you should replace your tires very soon. B is for brakes. There are two types of brakes typically found on a bike: rim brakes and disc brakes. Checking to make sure you have braking power is similar on either type. Squeeze the brake levers firmly. There should be a thumb's width gap between the lever and the handlebars. If this gap is too small, the brakes need to be tightened or your pads replaced. When the lever is released, it should snap back into position. On rim brakes, check to see that the brake pad is not worn thinner than 1/8 of an inch. Disc brake pads are harder to see. Overly worn disc brake pads will make a grinding noise when stopping as an indication they need to be replaced. C is for chain, cranks, and cassette. Check your chain by turning the pedals backwards. The chain should move freely. A lot of rust or a loose drooping chain are signs it needs to be replaced. Check the crank by wiggling both the left and right crank arms. There should be no lateral movement. If there is, tighten the bolt or take it to a mechanic. The cassette holds the gears on the rear wheel. Make sure it is clean and moves freely. Quick reminds you to check your bike's quick release levers, which may be used to secure your seat post and your wheels. They should be snug and closed. Many disc brakes will not have quick release levers. Make sure your through axle is tightened. The final part of the ABC Quick Check is the check ride. Before you set out, take a brief, slow ride to check that your bike is working properly and nothing is loose or getting in the way of your wheel and pedal movement. Now you've performed the ABC Quick Check and your bike is ready to ride. Choosing to go by bike.
I'm going to stop there briefly. When they did that ride that you saw them sort of drop their bike a little bit before they actually gave the ride. Doing that little drop where you just pick up the bike a little bit and just drop it on its tires is a really useful check to see, are there any new sounds in my bike of something becoming loose? It's as a cyclist, you use your ears a lot. Something else I'm going to go talk a bit about, they showed quick releases and they also showed through axles. They look similar, but through axles you screw on versus quick release, it's a lever action, which you close. And it's very important in a quick release that you should basically have to close it using the heel of your hand at a lot of pressure to make sure that that quick release really clamps strongly. If it doesn't clamp strong enough, open up the quick release. On the opposite side, just use your fingers to tighten the nut on the other side just a little bit and to try closing it again. If you can close it just with your fingers, the quick release is not clamping strong enough. You should use a lot of force to make sure the quick release really clamps very strongly, and then it is quite safe. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to keep on with the video. Now they're going to go over some electric bike stuff. Oops, here we go.
Bike is a smart decision, and if you choose to ride an electric assist bike, there are a few additional things to consider. Of the many bikes out there, road, mountain, hybrid, cargo, and more, all of these types are now available with the option of electric assist or as an e-bike. Riding an e-bike allows a rider to haul more weight or cargo, ride for longer distances, ride faster, and go more places. When riding an e-bike, it's important to remember a few additional tips. Be mindful of your battery life, and don't forget to charge your battery at the end of a ride. Take time to get a feel for the instant acceleration of the motor. Prepare for a slightly longer braking distance. Always follow the same rules of the road that you would on a traditional bicycle, and be courteous to fellow people on bikes that may be slower than you. Enjoy the ride.
Okay, one note about some of these videos, these newer videos, these were just released by the League of American Bicyclists just a few days ago. And the people you see riding in these videos were taken in Oakland, most of them, during the California Bike Summit, which I and some other SVBC staff members attended recently. So we actually have some of our friends showing up in the videos. One of the instructors that we have teach with us, actually, John Han Wang is on one of those videos. He's one of the Asian guys that's riding around. And then some other people from Bike East Bay. So it's kind of fun seeing some friends in these videos. Okay. Oops. Okay, what to wear. So if you're just commuting for errands, commuting to work, just getting around for transportation, think about just riding in your everyday clothes. And that's just fine. Now, if you do ride with everyday clothes, you'll need to make sure that your pant legs, if it's not shorts weather, if you're wearing pants, are properly, your pants legs stay clean, because the chain will rub against them. So in this particular picture, you'll see one person has their pant leg rolled up. Actually, this other person has their pant leg rolled up also. I'm not sure if you can see my videos, but I've got little clips here that are metal that I put around my pant legs, or I've got my video is disappearing here. Put this in front of me. I've got another strap that I just wrap around my pant leg. So I can strap my pant leg down so it stays out of the chain. And when riding cold weather, or actually, it's good to wear layers so that you can, you take layers on and off so that you don't get too sweaty. And as far as foul weather riding, we'll get into that later about the other gear you wear. Now, if you do go a long distance, like I have 12 miles each way, and I like riding somewhat fast, and so I get hot and sweaty. So I often, when I'm riding to work, will be in normal bike sort of clothing with the Lycra and shorts, because it's more comfortable. And then when I get to work, well, since I work at the Bike Coalition, I can actually be in that kind of clothing all day long, and people aren't so concerned about it. But if you're in a normal work environment, they're not expecting you to be in bike clothing, and then I would change into something else that's then dry, let my bike clothes hang out on my bike and dry off, and then I'll change back into them when I go home, and that works well for on what to wear. And I'll be going over some more advanced commuter tips later on as well.
Yeah, I do the same. I am in one pannier. I have my normal clothes, and I wear bike clothes to work for the same reason, so I don't turn into a sweaty mess. And then I also bring a small hand towel so I can, dry my hair if it got sweaty, and then I change into normal clothes.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. Those are great observations. Since we're talking a little bit about commuting, when I commute to work, I typically do a quick armpit wash in the bathroom because I tend to smell a little bit. And I've actually had to stop using deodorant. So doing a little armpit wash is helpful. It's a little, maybe you think too much information, but it is useful as a bike commuter. And then I carry a handkerchief with me everywhere that I roll up and use as a bandana, so it keeps my sweat away from my eyes, because I sweat a lot in my head also. And then I rinse it out when I get to work, and I use it as my washcloth, and I rinse it out, and I squeeze it out more, and I use it as my little towel. I use it as my napkin. So handkerchiefs, awesome invention. You can use it to, do about just everything. And as a bike tourist, very handy to have your towel, your washcloth, your napkin, and your sweatband just be one little piece of lightweight cloth. It's awesome.
Yeah, I also keep a different pair of shoes at work, so I can take off my cycling shoes and let them air out and put on the normal shoes.
And while you're speaking, okay, so you brought up cycling shoes. So I've got my cycling shoes here, and I've got cleats on these, so they snap onto my bike. And I've actually resoled these a few times. I've replaced the rubber, because the steel, the metal cleat doesn't wear away, but the rubber wears away. And when I got these real biking shoes, I've put extra rubber there so that the cleat, the metal part, does not rub against stone or wood. So I can I typically just walk around in my bike shoes everywhere without making noises, because I've made my cleat a little bit more recessed. These are SPD shoes. Other styles of cleats, some of them you cannot recess. Like the Look cleat is just a big honking piece of plastic. It's really great on the bike, but it sucks to walk in. Very slippery, very dangerous to walk around. It makes a lot of noise. And some other cleats also don't work so well. But they cleated shoes give you a really solid connection with your pedal. So if you're climbing a mountain, if you're bike touring, if you like riding every day for commuting, I find going to the dedicated bike shoe advantageous. Also, I don't feel the pedal through it also. It's a very nice solid feel. A little bit more about equipment. Okay, I went into a little more depth there. We'll get back to more equipment later. So some other equipment, make sure you have a lock if you plan to leave your bike outside. I mentioned earlier that I use my bike as my shopping cart. So if you can take your bike with you, that is the safest option. You can roll it in, roll it out, and you know everything is on it. If you lock your bike, you have to watch out for all the parts on it. But bike locks, having a good one is important with most scenarios when you're using your bike. Because bikes don't have the security cage that a car has built into it, which is very heavy. So your bikes are lightweight. Having a carrying system. This is a rack on the back. This other bike has panniers and mounts in the front. And the bike I have that I commute with has baskets in the back. I should put a picture of that in here someplace, but I haven't yet. Having lights and reflectors also is very important for normal kind of riding because you want to ride at night and you want to be visible. And my bike, actually, when I ride at night, I'm more visible at night than I am during the day, because I've got quite bright lights in all directions and reflectors and everything. So no one's missing me when I ride at night. And riding at night in Silicon Valley, by the way, is one of the best times to ride because Silicon Valley kind of shuts down after dark. There are very few people out. So it's kind of fun to ride at night. And
I just wanted to show really quickly, if you don't mind, you're talking about shoes. So these have like, these are like mountain biking shoes. And so they have like the little wheel that turns to tighten the laces, and because I don't feel comfortable clicking in when I'm in traffic, I use these with mountain bike pedals that have little nubs on them. They have like little screws that come out, so the shoe kind of mates with the pedal, but there's no real connection. It's more like a friction connection, and that way I can take my foot out just like I was wearing regular shoes.
Thanks for that, Ted. By the way, for those of you on video, are you able to see Ted when he talks and shows you things? No. Okay. Yeah, they're not, because like right now I'm spotlighted. So you see me, maybe the little picture on the side.
I'm in gallery view. I can see Ted.
I have gallery view. But if you're in
people can make their own choices. I just switched from speaker view to gallery view specifically because Ted was talking.
Yep. Okay, good. So there's a good tip. If someone else talks and wants to show you something, switch to the gallery view so you can see the other people. Otherwise, in speaker view, you'll see the presentation and see me primarily. Okay, Eleni, do we have any other questions popping up that I'm having trouble paying attention to in the chat?
Oh yeah, the chat box is going nuts all the time over here. Somebody had a question about batteries, if an e-bike battery would be expected to go bad after a few years. And there was a response in the chat saying the old lead-based did, and now lithium ions don't.
Yeah, some things about lead acid batteries are happiest when they're kept full most of the time, which is like the kind of battery you have in your car, but they're heavy. Lithium ion batteries are happiest when they're in the middle of their range. So if you keep them charged all the time, that's bad for lithium ion battery. It shortens its life. If you have it discharged all the time, that's also bad for lithium ion battery. But if you're cycling it regularly in the middle of its range, lithium ion batteries will last a long time. It can last many, many years. Little tip on those, which also affects laptop use as well as lights and e-bikes and car batteries.
Yeah, the Bosch battery, they say you should get at least 500 charging cycles, and the technology is smart enough to not count a half charge as a full cycle. So like it just so like if you run the battery down to 50% and charge it back up, that counts as a half cycle. So you can expect at least 500 cycles, charging cycles from the battery.
Which is probably about 2 years of riding if you rode it pretty much almost every day. But you can actually get upwards of 1,000 cycles sometimes out of some batteries. But it depends on your use and how you've abused it, and the temperature ranges also. Okay, Eleni, any other questions that I should address? Oh, actually, I see one more. Clip-on shoes. How long does it take to learn to ride them? If you're an experienced rider, it won't take that long, but do practice in kind of a safer area at first, because you will roll over a few times. It's very, like, I basically stopped at a stop sign And I thought I wasn't thinking about my new clip-on shoes. I thought, uh-oh, I just sort of rolled onto my side. Or it stopped when I got home a couple once. I just, uh-oh, and just sort of roll over. That was when I was younger. As you get older, yeah, rolling over, it hurts a little bit more.
Yes. And then we had another question. I know Tim and I can talk for hours about carrying things on bike. Someone asked if we think a basket versus a rack is a better cargo solution for a beginner.
The basket in front is handier because you can take stuff in and out of it more quickly. But the rear rack with panniers in the back and or baskets in the back will generally hold more than you fit in a front basket. And you can actually do both and spread the load around on a bike. So
true.
Try it out. It works differently.
Yep. And then what was the other one? Oh, good cheap pannier rack recommendations that you can buy on Amazon. Somebody did give a lead. I don't do much on Amazon, but any used bike shop like Good Karma or Bike Exchange will sell you a rack usually for $3, and they'll also do an install for you. So they have a lot of used racks lying around, great quality, and they'll do the install for you as well.
That is a great tip. That's really good price for a rack. Thank you, Eleni. Okay. Anything else we need to answer here?
Let's see. Yeah, Ardak, let me get to you in the comments. I think we need to keep going on the.
Okay.
Sorry, in the chat. We should keep going.
I'm going to keep going. We've got a lot more. I've got another 70 slides to go through. Okay, bike parking. So U-locks are generally the best kind of lock to really lock your bike to something. A really heavy chain is pretty good too. Cables are a little less secure because cables are easier to cut. You want to lock both wheels and the frame to whatever you're locking, and take removable accessories with you if you lock and leave your bike out. You see some illustrations here. See the U-lock is going around the pole and around the front tire and through the frame. You could also have it go around the rear tire in the frame. And then with the other wheel, have a cable go around the other wheel with either front or rear, so that your wheel doesn't get taken off. But the most important part is having the heaviest part of the lock go through the frame and on some immovable object. And it's very important to make sure like this pole this is firmly attached, hopefully. Sometimes the pole can be lifted out of the ground and they can move off with the bike, or they can lift the bike off the top of the pole to make sure there's a firmly attached sign. Parking meters are awesome for this kind of U-lock situation because they're very firmly mounted to the ground and there'll be this big heavy thing at the top. Although I have seen people use a pipe cutter on these round poles and zip off and then seal the bike. They'll cut the pole, take the bike off and run off with it. And in San Francisco, don't leave your bike overnight. I had some people who stayed with me. They had their bikes stolen in San Francisco because they weren't aware of the high bike theft there. They had their bikes taken from them. And bike tourists lost their bikes in San Francisco, which really sucked. And someone with an angle grinder sawed through these locks. That's a high crime area, so even U-locks aren't good enough in San Francisco and some other locations. Finally, register your serial number. Locally, most of our local governments recommend bikeindex.org, and that's highly recommended. It's a nonprofit that just registers your bike, and so you can look up a bike based on a serial number. Register all of your bikes at bikeindex.org. It's free. They'll take donations to help fund themselves, and they get some grants. That's the best way to make sure that if your bike is stolen, it can be recovered, because the police departments will look up on bikeindex.org if they recover a bike. They'll see it first there to find out who the original owner was. I see a question. U-lock with carbon frame bikes. The U-lock, well, it's kind of a pity because carbon fiber bikes are so light, and then you have to carry this massively heavy lock with it to lock down the carbon fiber bike. So most of the people I know that have carbon fiber bikes don't carry a heavy lock with it because they keep the bike with them everywhere. They just bring it inside with them and lock it up outside. Okay, let's see. I need to find there we go. Also with bike parking, make sure if you do park your bike, it's not in a hidden place where people can be working on your bike and taking it apart in place where they can't see it. So have it visible, secure, near the front entrance of wherever you're going in and out. So you've got a lot of traffic. A lot of eyes help decrease the amount of theft of a bike. And wherever you go, request bike parking if there isn't any. Ask for a visible, secure rack, or even better, bike lockers are awesome, particularly bike link lockers, which are shared use lockers with electronic sign in, sign out, so people know who's checking their bike in. So yes, request bike parking, or see if you can take your bike inside. Here's a little video now about bike parking, and also a little bit about bikes and sidewalks.
Always lock up your bike when it is unattended, even if it's just for a few minutes. When parking your bike, it is best to find a location that is highly visible to you and others, not secluded. If you're parking your bike at night, look for a well-lit parking spot too. An inverted U-rack or a hitch post is best. If dedicated bike parking is not available, find something that is anchored down and strong near the front entrance of your destination. Make sure that your parked bike does not impede other users. Use a U-shaped lock, a steel cable lock, or a combination of the two. Always take any accessories that can be easily and quickly removed, or lock them to the bike. Riding on the sidewalk may seem like a good option, but most of the time it is not. Riding on the sidewalk in denser, more urban areas can be dangerous and is often illegal. This is even more true when you are riding an e-bike. When riding on the sidewalk, you'll have to deal with pedestrians, signs, trash cans, and more. These are all obstacles that can be difficult to maneuver around and can make a sidewalk too crowded for bike use. Plus, drivers are typically not expecting a person traveling faster than walking speed on a sidewalk. This can be dangerous for a bicyclist when drivers are turning or pulling out of a driveway or side street. There may be times when riding on the sidewalk makes sense, like if you are going a short distance to a parking spot, or if there is a wide sidewalk with little foot traffic and few crossings along a high-speed road. In this case, moderate your speed, yield to pedestrians, and be very cautious at crossings. Enjoy the ride!
So we'll talk a little bit more about sidewalks later, but those are really good tips.
Always.
Okay, next up, helmet fit. It's very important for your helmet to fit correctly to protect your head, because you only have one head. The helmet should be level across your head and no more than 2 finger widths between your eyebrows and the helmet. The side straps should form a Y just below your earlobe here on this example. And the chin strap, item number 3 here, should be less than a ½ inch between your chin and the strap. Basically, if you can fit 2 fingers, but not much more between your strap and your chin, that's about right. So it's like this 2-finger check that Santa Clara County Public Health, the great brochure on. 2 fingers in the front, you do the Y underneath your ear with 2 fingers, and then check under your chin to make sure it's the chin strap keeps your helmet on correctly. Okay, now we get to rules of the road. Your safety and the perception of people on bikes depend on you to follow the rules of the road. We want everyone to recognize bicyclists as responsible road users. You have the same rights and duties as motorists, but if you do stuff that's illegal, then people have this, unhappy perception of what bicyclists do. Obey all traffic signals and stop signs. Ride with traffic and use the rightmost lane that serves your destination. We'll have some examples of that coming up. So remember that. Use the rightmost lane that serves where you want to go. You want to make sure that you're predictable when you're on the road. Make sure your intentions are clear to everyone on the road. Ride in a straight line that does not swerve between parked cars. And I really mean this. Ride as predictably as you can and ride in as straight a line as you can. Don't weave in and out. Signal turns and check behind you well before making a turn or changing lanes. That means you have to look over your shoulder and be able to ride in a straight line when you look over your shoulder. Again, we practice this a lot in Smart Cycling Part 2, the on-bike piece. Be conspicuous. You want to ride where people can see you, so you don't dash out and surprise them like people would if they're weaving in between parked cars. And now, fashion sense is nice. Some people have a particular way they want to look. When I'm on a bike, I want to make sure cars have no excuse for missing me. So I wear very bright clothing. I've got my safety vest here that I just throw on over whatever I'm wearing when I'm riding. And like when I bike touring across the country, I wore one of these. And when I bike commute, I just throw this on over my nicer looking jersey, just because I want to make sure that I'm going to have a very bright color on me with big reflectors on so no one can miss me. Use a front at night, use a front white light and a rear red light and reflectors at dusk and in bad weather. It really is important to be well lit. As I mentioned earlier, at night when I'm riding, you can't miss me because I've got lots of lights all over the place. When you're riding as a cyclist, it's very, very useful to make eye contact with other bicyclists, with pedestrians, so you know where they're going, you know they see you and you see them, and with motorists, so you know that they've seen you, whether you stopped at a stop sign or a stoplight, so they know you're there and you know they have seen you. And that's often, and motorists, a lot of them like yielding to bicyclists, even though you might not necessarily have the normal right of way. If the motorist signals you to go and you don't see any other people that could get confused about you going, you know, it's polite to accept the offer. And sometimes I've had motorists actually stop on a busier road. They see I'm having trouble getting across, come at the stop sign, even though they didn't have to let me go. They saw an opportunity to stop and let me go so I could make it across a busy road that I wouldn't have been able to get across easily otherwise. It's very nice of them. Typically, you should not ride on sidewalks, but there are some limited situations like getting to parking, or sometimes there's different situations where riding on the sidewalk is the best option. Just today, actually, I had a meeting with the city of Sunnyvale on their sidewalk riding ordinance to make it clearer and make it easier for cyclists to ride on sidewalks if they need to. But when you do ride on a sidewalk, you need to be going at a pedestrian speed, which is super slow for a bicyclist, but it is much safer for other pedestrians and for yourself. Because when you're on a sidewalk, if you ride too quickly and you go across a driveway or another street entrance, you pop out in front of a car and surprise them because they didn't see you. You weren't conspicuous to them, and you don't want to surprise the car driver because they can run you over. They have armor, you don't. You've got skin in the game. Okay, think ahead. Anticipate what drivers and pedestrians and other people will likely do next. Since this is defensive bicycling, defensive driving, you're thinking about what's happening around you and anticipating what happens before it happens. Watch for turning vehicles right outside the door zone. When we say right outside the door zone, that's when you ride next to a parked car. I recommend that you be 5 feet or more from the car. You think that sounds like a lot of distance, but some car doors will pop out 4 feet. And then you have an extra foot of startle room. So if you're 5 feet from a car and the car door opens, you keep riding a straight line, it doesn't phase you. But if you're 3 or 4 feet out, well, actually, if you're in the car doors and lane, you'll hit the car door and then you'll bounce off the car door, you'll land in the vehicle lane, and then someone will run you over. And several people have been killed in our area, particularly in San Francisco, because they rode in the door zone and they bounced out in front of traffic and died. So stay out of the door zone. If you're riding in the main lane of traffic, cars will pull around you. They'll see you because you're obvious. You're not surprising them. You're riding in a straight line. So really, seriously, stay out of the door zone. You just never know. It's really hard to see who's in the car. They could be bent over and they pop the door open. Look out for debris, potholes, and other road hazards to avoid them, and to ride in as straight a line as you can so you aren't suddenly swerving out in front of traffic to avoid them. So anticipate and look ahead and see what's happening. For railroad tracks, very important to cross railroad tracks at as right an angle as you can, especially if it's wet, because steel, when it's wet, is very slippery. Even if it's not wet, you can still get wiped out by railroad tracks by trying to ride across them at an angle. It'll just take your front wheel off and you fall down. Not pleasant. Railroad tracks are my bane of my existence when I was riding in Boston a lot, because they had a lot of trolley tracks in the road. And when I was riding in the rain, I couldn't see them, and they took me out several times, which is painful. So watch out for railroad tracks. Okay, ride ready. We've talked about ABC Quick Check. So you want to make sure that your bike is ready. Carry tools and supplies that are appropriate for your ride. When I ride cross country, I have everything. I'm carrying all the tools I need to fix anything that goes wrong with my bike, because I may be far from a bike shop. And when I'm commuting, actually, I carry almost everything with me also, so I can fix whatever I am when I'm commuting. But if I'm just going to the store, just a mile or two away, I don't bother carrying all that stuff, because I just have my grocery bags and my baskets. I just take those. Wear a helmet. Now, a lot of people overseas scoff at Americans wearing helmets. And if you're in the Netherlands, where they got great bicycle infrastructure and they're just riding slow and just going normal places where they're not going a long distance, yeah, riding a helmet, you don't really need it if you're just riding an average area with and you're completely separated from traffic. But we don't have many of those facilities in the United States. We've got a lot of cars around. So wearing a helmet both makes you visible, it makes you safer, and it's worth it. So ride a helmet, wear a helmet. Okay, some bike handling basics. We'll be getting a video shortly to show you getting on and off your bike. I mentioned earlier that it's important to get out of your seat when you get off a bike. And when you start up a bike, we'll see how that goes in this video coming up. Very important to learn how to start and stop properly. These are all practiced much more in the on-bike piece. It's hard to show when I'm talking to you about this. We'll be talking about steer. It's very important to steer in a straight line when you're looking over your shoulder, and shifting and scanning and signaling. We're going to cover all of that coming up here. So first off, gears help make a rider exert nearly the same amount of pedaling effort across a wide variety of terrain. Just keep yourself comfortable, your legs comfortable. And here you see the rear sprocket here with a chain on the biggest one. When the chain is closest to the bike, it's easiest to pedal. When it's on the littlest one in the back, it's hardest to pedal. Like when you're going down a hill, it'd be hard. Or when you're climbing a hill, you'd have it on the biggest gear in the back. So here we see the cassette in the back, the cogs. Here's a chain, here's a chain ring. When we're on level ground, we'll typically be the middle of both of these if you have chain rings in the front. A lot of bikes no longer have chain rings in the front. They just have a single, it's called 1x whatever it is, where they have a single chain ring and they've got just a big range in the back. But old style bikes, they had chain rings in the front. Like a touring bike typically have 3 in the front and a whole bunch in the back, with a chain in between. Be in the middle of that range from both ends for level ground. When you shift, it's getting harder to pedal like you're climbing a hill. You want the chain to get on a bigger cog in the back and a smaller chain ring in the front. And when the chain is as closest to your bike, that is at your easiest gear, when it's all the way up against your bike. And typically the lower numbers on both left and right will indicate you're in a lower gear range. It should make it easier to pedal. That means you have to pedal more to go the same distance. But when you're climbing a mountain, you want it as easy as possible because you're going up a very steep hill. Now, when you're going down a hill, however, you want to go faster. And so you'll shift to the highest gear. On the back, that'd be the smallest cog. And on the front, that'd be the biggest chain ring in the front. And that way you'll go, each pedal stroke, you'll go further, and you won't be able to, it'll prevent you from spinning too quick, unless you're going down a really steep hill, in which case just coast, don't bother pedaling anymore. Or if you're going with the wind, you'll also shift to a higher gear, because that way you can go faster. For best results, the chain needs to be in generally a straight line as much as possible. This is called cross chaining here, where you've got on the big chain ring here and the big cog in the back. That puts the most stress on the bicycle chain, which causes the most wear because the chain is bending the most, as well as it'll wear out the gears on both sides a little bit faster, and it'll wear out the chain faster, and it may make extra noises too. So you try to avoid this thing called cross chaining and try to keep the chain as aligned as you can. So avoid being on the biggest on both sides, which is the biggest chain ring and the biggest cog, and as well as avoid being in the littlest cog in the back and the littlest chain in the front. That'll do the chain at a different angle. So here's a little video on starting, stopping, and shifting.
Starting, stopping, and shifting are important skills to master to ride confidently and safely. To start, straddle the bike and stand in front of the seat. Place either pedal in the upright position around the 1 or 2 o'clock position. Push the pedal down and ease yourself onto the seat. Place your other foot on the pedal and begin pedaling. Hint, it is always easier to start in a low gear so that pedaling is easier. To stop, stop pedaling and put one pedal at the bottom of the pedal stroke. Shift your weight to the pedal closest to the ground. Squeeze both brakes equally. Slide off the seat. Place the other foot on the ground. Most bikes have gears that help a rider exert nearly the same amount of pedaling effort across a variety of terrain.
Actually, I'm going to stop here and just go backwards a second. This person here, it's hard to tell that he actually got off of the seat or not. He's actually still pretty high up. When I get off my seat, I'm totally in front of the seat and down with my feet planted solidly on the ground. And it's a really good technique to get used to getting off your saddle and be able to get your feet fully on the ground, and then using your pedal to push you back up and get back into the seats. But here I'll on
the ground. Most bikes have gears that help a rider exert nearly the same amount of pedaling effort across a variety of terrain. Here are some key tips to remember when shifting gears. Shift gears when you are pedaling smoothly and rhythmically. Most shifting is done with your right hand, which shifts in small changes. Your left hand controls bigger changes in your pedal effort and is used less frequently.
A quick note here, your right hand controls the rear derailleur, and your left hand controls the front derailleur, which we're seeing right here is the front derailleur shifting in this particular piece of the video. And your front derailleur, think of that as shifting between gear ranges. Those are big jumps in gears. versus the right shifter, which does the rear derailleur, shifts in smaller increments. And you'll be using that most of the time, unless you suddenly change from going up a mountain to going down a mountain, in which case you'd use the front derailleur more.
The farther your chain is from the center line of your bike, the harder it is to pedal. Use these gears when you have momentum, such as going downhill. When your chain is closer to the center line of your bike, it is easier to pedal. Use these gears when pedaling becomes more difficult, such as when you are traveling uphill. Anticipate the need to change gears and try to shift just before you start to push too hard or spin too fast. Smooth and efficient shifting requires practice, so get out there and enjoy the ride. Starting.
Okay, so next up, scanning. This is critical for your safety. You need to look all over the place to see what is happening around you. And a cool thing about biking is you have no pillars or other obstructions on your vehicle to block you from seeing whatever you need to see. You should be able to look over your shoulder and see what's on your side. And looking around also communicates to others what your intentions are. Like depending on where you're looking, it sort of gives a signal to other people about where you're thinking of going. It's very important to maintain a straight line and ride in a straight line when you're scanning around to see what's happening around you. And we will practice this again in Smart Cycling Part 2. And if you are not comfortable, you should, before you go to Smart Cycling Part 2, just try doing it on your own, scanning and riding a straight line if you don't know how to do that yet. That's a very important skill to have. Okay, and then there's signaling, where you scan first to see what's happening, just like you would in a car. You look and see what's clear in the lane. Then you signal where you're going to go. And here we've got some signals on the side. So it's stopping. We have one arm up, the elbow is up, and the palm is pointed backwards to signal a stop. We've got a left turn where you're holding your left arm all the way out to the left. And then in the bottom two pictures, you've got two ways to signal a right turn. You can do the traditional way, which you do in a car, where your left arm is out and your hand is pointed up. Or in a bicycle case, you could also just hold out your left arm and stick it out to one side and just point in the direction you're going. So left and right on a bicycle can be really easy. Just point your right arm in the right direction or point your left arm in the left direction, and tells you where you want to go. Now, when you're in a car, you can't use your right arm to indicate a right turn because your arm's not long enough to stick out the window in a wide vehicle. So you have to use your left arm and holding it up to signal a right turn. It's important to hold it for 4 to 6 seconds so people have a chance to see it, and then scan again before you make your motion. Now, in a car case, it is illegal to make a turn without signaling, although so many people do it, which really sucks for cyclists because sometimes cars move in front of you and they didn't indicate where they were going. As a cyclist, the most important thing is for you to maintain control of your bicycle. So if it's not safe for you to take a hand off your steering wheel because you need to maneuver around something or need to keep your bike stable, maintain control of your bike first and try to indicate direction you're going by looking and or your position of where you are on the road, which we'll go over in a minute. But if you can, do signal. It gives you more respect from vehicles around you because you're being responsible as a user of the road to tell people where you're going. So signal if you can, but it is not required as a bicyclist because it's possible that some people could fall if they tried to signal. We don't want that to happen. And we've got a little video here on signaling.
Signaling and scanning are an important way everyone on the road communicates with each other. By indicating and making predictable movements, we can more safely share space on the road together. Signaling your change of direction not only makes you safer, but is also required by law for drivers and for people on bikes. Before signaling or changing your direction, look behind you to see if it is clear. Looking or scanning also communicates to other road users that you are about to change lanes or directions. So, even if you are riding with a mirror and know what's behind you, turn your head as a way of communication. pro tip for maintaining a straight line when scanning? Whichever direction you are turning your head, take your hand on that side of your body off the handlebar and place it on your hip as you scan. At the same time, or directly after your scan, signal your intention to change lanes or turn. Signal a left-hand turn by fully extending your left arm out to the side. To signal a right turn, fully extend your right arm out to the side. A more traditional style of a right turn signal is to bend your left arm up at a right angle with your hand flat. Signal in advance of your turn for about 3 to 5 seconds so that both of your hands can be on the handlebars during the turn. It is good practice to let others know when you are slowing or stopping. This is critical if you are stopping outside of an intersection or there are other road users behind you. Show you are planning to stop by extending your left arm out and at a downward angle. If there are other bicyclists behind you, it is good practice to also yell, "stopping" or "slowing." Use your time riding in parks or separated from traffic to get comfortable signaling and scanning while sharing the road. Practice scanning and signaling often, all the time if possible. Enjoy the ride.
And so I see one Mather commenting about the bent arm signaling. I have some friends who use the bent arm signaling for right turns, but most cyclists I know just stick their hand out straight in the direction they're going because it's super obvious and hopefully easy since most people can ride with either one or the other hand on the handlebars.
Signaling and...
Sorry. Okay, I've got a little bit of a pause here because we're halfway through. Do we have any questions so far from everyone? Any questions that I haven't addressed yet? Eleni, do you see anything I need to address, or does anyone want to, looking through? Oh, I've got someone, Eleni mentioned carrying a pool noodle to force more space. That's a cool technique that's fun. Eleni, anything else I need to address? Or anyone want to inject any other questions about what?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. The questions definitely slowed down in this section.
Okay. Okay. There's nothing.
When I cross intersections, why am I always very slow at crossing it? Like I make it to the other side, the light is already yellow. Oh, interesting.
Okay, so that's a great question. And I have had that happen a lot, especially when I'm hauling trailers. And a couple of things. One, you learn how to do the power start to get accelerated faster from a start, which we cover at our Smart Cycling Part 2. That's when you have the pedal cock, you push down it to really get going faster. Also, you can anticipate the light as a cyclist to see what's happening a little bit. And ideally, if they've got leading walk signals where the pedestrian light goes first, it's not completely legal yet, but it's accepted technique for cyclists to say, oh, the pedestrian thing is going, I'll get going, so I get moving, so I get through the intersection before the cars, so I'm ahead of the cars, and so I don't get trapped in the intersection. Finally, when you see that you can't make it across quick, and then the light turns yellow too quickly, talk to the city and report that as an issue, that you need more time to get across the road as a bicyclist, and they can change light timing. So they can give more time for cyclists to get across that intersection. So there are 3 things you can do. There's actually a bill in front of the state legislature right now that's important to support, called the Bicycle Omnibus Bill. It would make having bicyclists use walk signals as a way to go across completely legal. And it would also fix a bunch of other bicycling laws that affect cyclists. So if you go to calbike.org, we've got a bunch of legislation. We've got a lot of great bills in front of our legislators right now in California that will fix a lot of issues, including that one. Yeah, I won't go into further. I can talk a lot about that. So did I answer the question? Or Lenny, can you think of anything else, any other answers for that question?
No, I think the pedal power is the most immediate thing. The power start position is the most immediate. Mr. Mather said, I've never seen anyone use the bent arm signal outside a bike course. Car drivers will never recognize that. Use straight arm out. Possible. I think that sometimes I feel when I'm signaling a right turn with my right arm, my own body or the bag I'm carrying will block my arm. It's not as visible as using my left arm. If other road users are passing me on the left, I think it's more visible to signal with my left arm. But it's also much more obvious where I'm going if I just point to the right with my right arm.
Anything else, Lenny? Okay.
Well, I've entered.
I'm seeing Mather make another comment further back about several lights in a reflective vest. I really am a big fan of reflective vests. I wear them all the time when I'm just doing transportation cycling. And I do have several lights. I've got a light, actually here, I can show you here. It's showing up, yeah. I got a light on top of my helmet. There's a visibility light. It's not for me to see by, but for other people to see me, because it's red in the back and it's white in the front. And it's very visible, well above parked cars. And I've got bikes on my light. I'm on my bike that are flashing lights just to have people see me. And then I've got visibility lights so I can see. I got a really bright headlight, and I've got a backup bright headlight also, because I do a lot of riding at night. I don't want to be left at night without a light that I can see by. And I also have video cameras on my bike as well, front and back, so that I can record any bad behavior in the case of other motorists. And I'm frequently reporting that bad behavior. And some police departments accept that and take it and do something with it. And others kind of ignore it and say, oh, we don't care because you're a cyclist, which is very disheartening. But it is worth recording it and post. And there's actually a video cycling evidence website where you can report issues. And I have my personal YouTube channel. Actually, I mostly use it to post bad behavior by motorists, so I can educate people about what's happening. Let's see. Oh, we've got a comment about VTA drivers insensitive to riders, especially when they are parked and can view us yet decide to start from bus stop. Now, actually, with VTA drivers, I've actually had some pretty good luck with a lot of VTA bus drivers. And when I've observed a VTA bus driver do something particularly well, I actually call VTA and say, wow, that bus driver did a great job of really giving me a lot of space and passing me and honoring them. So I try to encourage good behavior with the VTA bus drivers. And when they do something really good, I recognize that. And it's relatively rare that VTA bus drivers, at least, have done bad behavior. Now, elsewhere in the country, I've had some bus drivers do some really rude things, like honk at me when I had to take the lane of like, I don't have any place else to go. What do you want me to do? And I've had some bus drivers pass me extremely close. That's very, most states have passing laws. It's 3 feet for most states. Some are 4, some are 5 feet. Really, a 5 to 6 feet as a driver, if you're passing a cyclist, is the most polite thing to do. Really, go to the other lane, pass them like you would a car. In fact, they're actually, I think part of the bicycle omnibus bill, or maybe it's another bill in front of California right now, it would be requiring cars to actually switch lanes to pass a cyclist, which would be great because that'd give you a lot more than 3 feet. So, and if you have a big truck passing only 3 feet away, that is super scary because they're loud, they're big, and they've got a lot of wind around them. Let's see, the BTA experience video. Someone suggested video camera. Cool. Cycle video. And thank you, Elaine, for placing that link. How do I secure the video camera? Actually, these video cameras I have pop off my bike. They just twist off and they pop off because they are expensive. I don't want to lose them, which is another reason why I often roll my bike inside and roll it out back outside with me so the bike stays with me so I don't lose my video cameras. And yes, so if you do run into VTA drivers who are not polite, take a picture, get the bus number, record the location and the time, and get the route number of the bus. So you can report a bus driver so that they can become better educated. The Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition has offered training to shuttle bus drivers. I'm not sure if we've offered it to VTA bus drivers. And actually at the California level, by the way, there are people that are training police officers also on how bicyclists behave. So the police officer are better educated. A lot of police officers don't quite if they don't bicycle themselves, they don't understand how a bicycle should behave to be safe.
Yeah, I had an experience with a coworker whose son was taking their driving test, and he wouldn't cross the solid line into the bike lane because his dad told him not to make a right turn. He was waiting until he got to the dotted part of the bike lane, which is what you're supposed to do. And the driving instructor docked him 4 points and said he was supposed to get into the bike lane to make the right turn when the instructor told him to. And I was like, oh, that's fascinating. Like, why would the instructor not know the difference between the solid lane and the dotted lane?
Even if there are no dots, if the bike lane is considered a right turn lane for cars when they approach an intersection. And the dashing is actually an indicator that the bicyclist is okay at that point, really, for a cyclist to leave the bike lane and get in the main through lane if they need to, because the car may be waiting to make a right turn. And also an indication to the driver that now is a good time, if the bike lane is clear, if there's no one, they're not pulling in front of someone, for them to get into the bike lane to make the right turn, so that the cyclist knows that you're making a right turn and they don't get caught by a right hook, where a cyclist in the cycling lane has a car turn right in front of them to make that right turn, rather than merging into the lane with the bikes to make a right turn safely, where they can't cut off a cyclist. So that's a very, hope all of you merge into the bike lane before you take your right turn, because that is the law, but so many people don't know that.
I'd almost prefer if cars went where the cars stayed outside the bike lane and even turned in front in the case of a red light, because when I got hit by a car recently, I was just sitting in the bike lane at a red light, and the car got in the bike lane to turn right, but didn't see me despite my yellow jersey and lights, and hit me because they didn't stop before turning right. Now, if the lanes were designed to keep the cars on the outside of us turning in front of us, that at least gives us a chance to not get hit from behind like that.
But
Yeah.
when you're straight ahead of a car, that is the safer place to be, because you should be completely obvious, because they can see you directly. If you're to one side or the other, then it's not as likely they'll be able to see you. So in that case where you were hit, where you were stopped at a stoplight, that was a clear violation, where the driver should have been able to see you, because you're right in front of their nose.
Right.
And generally it's much safer to be right in front of them than to one side or the other, because right hooks, then it's like, oh, I didn't see them.
Right.
When they're right in front of you, how much more obvious can you be than being right in front of them? So that's completely the fault of the driver. And there's really, and the only way to protect against that is having a fully protected intersection where there's completely separate signals, one for cyclists to go, separate one for cars to go, and a separate one for pedestrians to go. If you can completely separate it, then you have no conflict. But that's not how the United States road system is currently designed.
Right.
So actually, when you're waiting at a stoplight, and you should actually be in the through lane straight ahead, so that you'd be going straight, so that a car turning right can make a right turn around you on your right and wouldn't hit you also that way. And we'd actually practice that in the Smart Cycling Part 2, where if you're proceeding straight through an intersection, rather than hanging out on the right side of the lane, you'll be in the center of the through lane for that intersection, and then you can't be hit. Well, I mean, you could still be hit, but then they'd be going through the red light also straight, which they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, it was just an intersection where there was a car to the left of you, you're in the bike lane, and there's nowhere else to be but in the bike lane.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, you could just pile up behind the cars waiting for the stoplight. Although as a cyclist, I do like being able to get ahead of cars by using the bike lane to get more in the front. And then the cars behind me just have to know they have to wait for me if I'm in the bike lane, because it's perfectly legal for a cyclist to stay in the bike lane to proceed straight, or to be in the through lane at an intersection to proceed straight. So definitely things to take into account. Okay, we've got to get going because I've got a lot more. I've got another, a lot of slides to still cover. Okay, I'm only about halfway through my presentation now. Okay, so principles of traffic law. We're going to talk a lot about where to be on the road and how to follow traffic signals. So positioning, where should I be on the road, which is pertinent to the conversation we're just having. Should I share the lane, which means side by side, or should I take the lane? Generally, when sharing the lane side to side, the lane has to be super wide, because especially when you're next to a parked car, a lane has to be actually a double width lane, really, to share a lane when you're next to a parked car. If there's no parked cars, the lane can be a bit narrower because you don't have to have that 5-foot clearance from a parked car. Now, taking the lane is a very common thing for experienced transportation cyclists to do. And in this particular picture, you see someone taking the lane with cars in front of them, cars in back, and they're just holding the whole lane, not trying to be far on the far right or be an edge rider, as a lot of transportation cyclists call it. Because when you're edge riding and it's a narrow lane, you tempt cars. Oh, I can squeeze by them, which is very, very dangerous for the bicyclist. But if you take the lane or in the center of the lane, they say, oh, they're a vehicle. I have to switch lanes to get around them. Now we're going to see a video, I think. Yes, a traffic safety tips where we'll talk about this. Let's watch this video.
All road users have a responsibility of sharing the road with others. As a person on a bike, there are a few key principles to understand so that you can be more confident and safer when cycling on the roadways. Let's start with riding in traffic. Bikes are recognized as vehicles of the road and have the same rights and responsibilities as motorists. As a person on a bike, you will most likely be a slower vehicle on the road, so position yourself in the rightmost part of the travel lane that goes the direction you are going. Ride at least 1.5 feet from the edge of the road so you have space between yourself and the road's edge. You'll need this space to maneuver around debris or potholes when necessary, but do not ride in the gutter. The gutter is not a travel lane. Always ride with the flow of traffic. Obey traffic signals and be predictable. Before changing lanes, signal, look behind you to ensure no traffic is coming, and move when it is clear. Always pass on the left. As a cyclist, bike lanes make your travel more comfortable, but they are not mandatory for you to use. Be sure to ride outside of the door zone if parked cars are present along your path. When a road is narrow, position yourself in the middle of the lane so you are clearly visible. It is safer to ride further into the lane so drivers can see you. They should move over to go around you.
So I want you to take a look at where this bicyclist is positioned. Notice how far they are from the car doors. And so when you need to take the lane, so although she could ride a little bit further to the left if she was still staying 5 feet away from this car, since she can't ride right next to the car, I need to stay 5 feet away, and this is not a super wide lane here, it's very important for her to actually to be in the middle of that lane. Even though it looks like there's a lot of space there, there's not. And drivers have to get used to this. The driver will see this and say, whoa, look at all that space. But if she rides a little bit over here, she's still clear of that car door, but then she's tempting a motorist to pass her too closely when the car should be crossing into the lane next door like this black car has here. So we practice this a lot in Smart Cycling Part 2. It takes some getting used to for a lot of cyclists, but this is one of the most safe things you can do, is basically taking the lane when you need to and knowing when to take the lane.
When there is a travel lane that serves multiple directions, use the rightmost part of the lane that serves your direction. If traveling straight through an intersection, position yourself in the center of the lane. If turning left, position yourself in the left part of the lane. Remember to signal your turns, make eye contact with other road users when possible, be predictable, and follow traffic laws. You, as well as other road users, are entitled to the space you are using. This includes
Now, on this particular thing here, this is called a bike box. And often these are painted green. And one warning about using a bike box is be familiar with the signal timing of the light you're waiting at, because you don't want to pull in front of this car right here just as their light's turning green. And I'm riding very regularly in all the areas I am, so I know my signal timings down. So I recognize that signal has a long time to turn. So I will use bike boxes and move over so I can take a left turn using the bike box. But a safer thing, if you're taking a left turn, is just pile up behind the car, just like a car. Just be behind the cars that are all in the left turn lane to take that left turn. So bike boxes are useful, but be careful with them so you don't surprise a car that's ready to just push on the gas when the light turns green.
It's the space behind, to the sides, and in front of you. There are 2 important ways to gear up for a safer ride: lights and helmets. A front white light and a rear red light are important to have when riding at dusk, nighttime, or inclement weather. In many states, it is the law. Also, be sure to use reflective gear on your bike or on your body so that all road use.
Sorry. I just was trying to pause that there. And let me go back here. So
fit snug. Important to have helmets. Time. And many also.
Sorry, I'm trying to find that. There we go. This is one of our instructors who will be on with Smart Cycling Part 2. This is John Han. So he was part of the videos that we took. Okay, sorry. I misclicked there.
So that you are more easily seen.
Oh, man, I have trouble controlling this video. Let me go back there. And there was let me start this.
You are more.
And this is how I ride. So I've got a bright helmet and a bright vest, just like John Han just popped on here for this part of the video.
Easily seen by others. Helmets. A bicycle helmet is another essential layer of protection. A helmet should fit snug. It should sit on your head so there is only a 2-finger width space between your eyebrows and the helmet. The side strap should make a Y below your ear, and there should only be a small 1/2-inch gap between your chin and the strap. Once you have these basic safety tips covered, you're ready to enjoy the ride.
Whoops. Back here. Okay. Positioning. So there's several types of positioning. There's lane positioning, which is left to right, where you are in the lane. There's speed positioning, depending on how fast you're going. And knowing that, we'll actually have a video coming up that shows more of that. Changing lanes, you want to be on the correct side of the lane, depending what direction you're about to turn. Like left, be on the left side of the lane, turning right side of the lane. If you're going straight through, be in the middle of the lane. And then there's intersection positioning, where you are at an intersection, which also refers to what I was just talking about. Lane positioning, a person on a bike has a basic right to the road. You are a vehicle on the road. You're entitled to the space that you need to operate safely. The safest place to position yourself may be in the middle of the lane, as we've seen, and quite often it is actually in the middle of the lane. Speed positioning, with slow-moving vehicles, when you're moving slowly, you should be in the rightmost lane, just like a slow-moving vehicle would be in a car. And if you need to pass, you need to pass on the left. And so if you're moving faster than traffic, you should be in, or if you're able to move fast, you should be in a more left lane, just like a car. But usually a bicycle is not going as fast as a motor vehicle. So generally you're in the rightmost lane almost all the time. Changing lanes, we need to scan, signal our intention, scan again, yield to any traffic, and then move smoothly over to where we need to go. So in this picture here, we've got a bicycle scanning to see what cars are coming, and then they're signaling and scanning and moving to the left into the left turn lane so they can take a left. Intersection positioning, which I mentioned earlier, is really, really important, and it signals your intent without even having to signal with your hands. And here, there's an example of the cyclist on the right is about to take right turn. The cyclist in the middle is going to be proceeding straight, and the cyclist on the left side of that lane is getting ready to take a left. Intersection positioning also is be in the rightmost lane that serves your destination. In this case, there are 2 right turning lanes. You don't want to stay in those right turning lanes. You want to get into the rightmost through lane so you can proceed straight through that intersection. Now, if there was only a single right turn lane, or if sometimes actually hanging out in the leftish right turn lane, because if you see ahead that there's a bike lane that kind of goes straight, sometimes that's okay, but it's always okay to get into the through lane to make sure your intentions are completely clear that you're going across and no one can cut you off because they're taking a right. And also at intersections, you can also decide, oh, that intersection is too complex, get off and be in the pedestrian space and just navigate it as a pedestrian. That's always an option. Waiting at red lights. Don't squeeze your way up to the front between cars, because again, cars are not quite expecting that. It's called lane splitting. You see motorcyclists do it sometimes. Bicycle messengers do it a lot, but it's not the safest thing to do. It's safer to wait for traffic to move and just be a vehicle and take vehicle space. So when I'm waiting for a left turn light, I'm typically, I like staying almost a car length behind the car in front of me, unless it's an electric car. Electric car, they may be a little closer to, because they don't smell, right? Cars stink. They have the tailpipe coming in your face. I like to stay back behind motor vehicles. And then when a motor vehicle pulls up, they see I'm giving a lot of space to the motor vehicle ahead of me. They give me a lot of space behind me typically. They aren't riding my rear tire or rear bumper as such. They honor me, giving me space when I stop like a vehicle. Right turn and through lane. If turning right, again, for like this lane here, which is through and a right turn lane, be on the right side of it if you're taking right, be in the middle if you're proceeding straight, or maybe a little bit on the left side in this case. So we had the double right turn. Same, I think we just talked through this just a little bit before to cross both these and get into the through lane. Multiple left turn lanes. Again, you typically want to be in the rightmost of these left turn lanes, so you end up in the right position after you make the turn. Unless, of course, if you're doing a U-turn, which this wouldn't make sense for this very tight thing, but if you're doing a U-turn, then you'd be in the leftmost of those lanes to make that U-turn. So think ahead and position yourself according to where you need to go. On one-way streets with 2 more lanes, just do it like you would with a car. You all hopefully have had driver education. So like you can take a left turn from left side of a one-way road onto another one-way road, or and this might be a two-way road. It's hard. See, let me move my thing to one side. No, this is actually a one-way road to a one-way road. On and off ramps. These are very challenging for a lot of cyclists, regardless of their experience level, because you have some very fast moving traffic. Here, it's very important to be assertive and be clear and really scan to know exactly what you're headed into. And I will typically signal and look at the drivers to see if they're giving me space. And I will be somewhat aggressive if I need to and assert myself, but it's a fine line. You need to make sure they have enough space so they can react to you as you try to move across these lanes where you have merging traffic. So this is one of the most challenging situations. When you ride across the US, you'll be faced with this periodically, and you have to get used to it. And if you're riding locally, a little less likely, but there are some situations where you would have to be faced with this in Silicon Valley as well. You want to be visible, predictable, ride in as straight a line as you can, follow the same principles we just discussed about changing lanes. Definitely one of the most challenging situations, though. If you went to the Gilroy, on the June 5th, I was thinking about having one of these exact situations on the final exam, as it were, for doing down there. I backed away from that because I don't want to challenge new cyclists quite to that situation. So I made the cycling test route a little simpler, so you don't have to do quite this aggressive a maneuver across a merge, an on and off ramp. Okay, riding on sidewalks. They can be dangerous, as we mentioned earlier. Scan, move at pedestrian speeds when you're on the sidewalk. Generally don't ride on a sidewalk if you can avoid it. There are just a very few situations where it can be the safest option, but be super cautious and know the local laws about whether you're allowed to be on a sidewalk or not. Okay, we've got another video on lane positioning.
More than half of injury-causing crashes involving cars and people on bikes happen at intersections. It's important to know how to reduce your risk at these locations. How you position yourself when approaching the intersection will increase your visibility to drivers. In many instances, you may feel safer exiting the bike lane to make your turn. Combined with scanning and signaling, proper intersection positioning will let other road users know where you are going. As a general rule, you want to be in the rightmost lane that is going in the direction you are traveling. For example, if you are in a lane that serves two directions, such as one lane that allows travel straight or turning right, position yourself in the center part of that lane. This will discourage right-turning cars and trucks from passing you. More than half of injury-causing crashes involve.
Sorry, this is actually hard to control this. Now, I wanted to stop it here. Where are we doing? Because they were oops. Let me see if I can find that position again. There we go. So right here, these two cyclists, it's okay to ride side by side in a situation where we're riding together with someone else. A lot of car drivers think it's not legal, but it is legal. And it can be one of the safest things you can do in certain situations when you're riding with other people, because if you're strung out front to back, it makes you a much longer distance for people to pass you, and you're not as compact. And also, it's very helpful to be able to talk to other people. Like drivers in cars get to be side by side talking to their passengers, and cyclists riding, it's just friendly for them to talk to each other while they're going while they're proceeding. And in this particular case, it's actually they're kind of together form a vehicle also right here.
In the center part of that lane. This will discourage right-turning cars and trucks from passing you and dangerously cutting in front of you to make a right turn. If you are faced with an intersection with multiple left.
One thing, this person here is Allison Dewey. She's actually the Director of Education for League of American Bicyclists, executing this next turn here.
Turn lanes, be sure to position yourself in the rightmost lane turning left. In some cities and at some large intersections, there may be a two-stage turn box.
Now that two-stage turn box, we have a lot of these showing up now in San Jose. And they are a very useful device to get around, to make a left turn, because you can basically stay on the right-hand side of the road, get through the intersection, stop in that turn box, and it's protected. There's no traffic that should go through there. And then when the light turns in the opposite direction, or the crossways direction, then you can proceed on. And I use this technique sometimes to get across intersections faster than a car could, because if I know the signal timing, I know that if I stop in that left turn, that stopping area for the left turn box, I know that the cross traffic light is going to turn before the left turning light then turns. So I can actually make a left turn faster than the car can, which is kind of useful. So actually, let me go back just a little bit so you can see that. So see, you can proceed straight across, wait in this left turn box, and then the traffic light will turn in the opposite direction and let you go through along with the through traffic. And then the left turning cars that are waiting up back here someplace, they'll get their time after the cross traffic has gone through, because often the left turns happen first and then the through traffic gets to go through. Keep going.
This bike infrastructure helps make you safer when turning left at an intersection. To turn left using a turn box, you will ride straight through the intersection in the bike lane until you reach the turn box. Stop in the turn box and reposition yourself to go straight through the intersection in the other direction on the green light. When approaching or waiting at a red light at an intersection, avoid the temptation to squeeze between stopped cars to reach the front of the intersection. Drivers are not expecting you. This can be really dangerous if the light changes.
So what Allison actually here, the director of education, just did here. I actually have done this periodically on Lawrence Expressway and multi-lane road, and or I'm waiting for a left turn. I'll just be able to signal across, get into the left turn lane, and just wait with the other cars before finishing my left on that somewhat complex road.
And traffic starts to move. This is especially dangerous with trucks and buses whose drivers do not have good visibility to see you behind or alongside them. Keep your position in line and wait with the other road users. It is important to remember that if you feel uncomfortable about traversing an intersection, you can always get off your bike and walk your bike as a pedestrian in the crosswalks. Enjoy the ride!
You know, Lenny made a comment that you're riding side by side can help you feel comfortable taking lane space on the road. Let's see. Okay, protected bike lane. We're going to go through quickly some slides here. So protected bike lanes is an example of them where you've got these upward slats here. And that's actually a little technical piece of information. These are actually called protected bike ways. Some traffic experts don't want you to call them protected bike lanes, because officially in the legal law and the laws, if it's a bike lane, then a bicycle is required to be in bike lanes whenever there's no obstruction. But with a protected bike way, a bicyclist is not required to be in the bike way. They can actually be out in the regular traffic lane, because these protected bikeways might block them from taking a left turn they may need to take or getting into a driveway. So there's nuance in the law, but most people call them protected bike lanes because it's just there's what people generally call them. But you will run across some people that take umbrage at calling it the protected bike lane. I don't worry about it so much, but when it's protected, it allows you not to have to be in the lane all the time, in this particular lane all the time. That's a sort of a nuanced point. But they are, actually, let me go back to this. They do make you feel much more safe, because typically a driver, the most serious accidents where you die from getting hit by a car is where a car overtakes you. And this completely prevents, or almost completely prevents that from happening, because they'd be whacking all these poles before they get to you. So having protected bike lanes or protected bikeways does make cyclists way more comfortable and prevents one kind of accident from happening. Sometimes you have two-way protected bike lanes, which you have traffic going in both bike traffic going in both directions. And this particular example here, you see the yellow line, you know you're in a two-way facility when you've got a yellow line down the middle. And so bikes can travel in both directions together in this space. And for long stretches, this can be a very comfortable way for bicyclists to get places. However, you notice there's a driveway right here, it looks like. And this driver then has to look both ways for cyclists. So if you're in one of these bikeways, do be extra careful around motorists who are trying to cross it, because they may not actually be thinking about looking in both directions before they cross this piece. This is also an example of a protected bike lane where you've got parking on one side as well. And it looks like this is parking is going away from us. It looks like this might be a one-way road going in this direction, because cars are parked on the left side of this roadway. And then they've got a two-way bike lane. So bikes can actually go two ways on what would otherwise be a one-way road, which is kind of handy for bicyclists. It's faster for them to get to where they're going, versus cars have to go around the block. Bike boxes, we've already talked a little bit about those. They're typically these days painted all in green and large. Just be careful if you go into a bike box for a left turn that you know that you have enough time to move left in that bike box before the light turns green in order to make a left turn. But bike boxes are kind of handy also if in general, because you can get ahead of traffic so that they aren't going to do a right hook in front of you because you're in front of them instead. So they see you first. Right hooks where a car takes a right hook around you is a very frequent cause because drivers don't understand that bicycles are actually traveling pretty fast and they'll cut you off, and that's a dangerous position to be in, and a lot of people get hurt. Some other bike facilities, sometimes you have left side bike lanes or called contraflow bike lanes where on a one-way street, you could be with traffic in the regular direction and the other direction. There are actually some examples of these in San Jose. Buffered bike lanes are a very useful thing, keeps cars further away from you. And they're often used as an intermediate step before they put in a protected bike lane. They'll actually experiment with the buffer first to see how cars adapt to that. Heading is a great example. Heading in San Jose has some buffered bike lanes and also has some protected bike lanes on it as well. And the heading, I think they're going to convert to a protected bikeway at some point, but they haven't done it in some sections. Also, you may run across a situation with raised bike lanes where the bike lane will actually be at sidewalk level, which is a really more comfortable place. Then you've got a curb between you and car traffic. And bikes and pedestrians generally mix more in a more friendly fashion than bikes and cars because pedestrians and bicycles both don't have armor around them. And I've seen a very excellent use of raised bike lanes in Helsinki, where they basically had a bike space and a walk space. It was marked in paint on a raised level that you were completely separate from traffic right in downtown Helsinki in Finland. And I'd like to see that treatment more in the United States, but I have not seen it that often in the United States. Let's see. Eleni, do we have any questions showing up right now?
Actually, yes. Ardak asked one question about her quick release lever having rust spots on it. What can we do to treat it, and what to use to cover the handle to prevent rust?
Generally, a light coat of lubricant. It will help prevent rust. And yeah, most quick releases are plated, so they shouldn't rust. But yeah, scrubbing the rust off, and if you need to, you can paint it. Rust-Oleum, paint it over if you needed to. Just don't get it in the mechanism. And then just having lubricant will also help prevent rust on it. And looks like another question about mirror replacement. Okay, so as far as using mirrors, I actually ride with a mirror regularly. It mounts to my helmet. Here's my helmet. I'm not sure if you can see the mirror or the mirror showing up. Wow, my helmet's disappearing there. I've got a mirror right here. There we go. I've got a mirror right here. I put my hand behind it so you can see the mirror. It's attached to my helmet, so I want to put it on. I've got the helmet, the mirror is attached. I like using a mirror because I like monitoring what's behind me without turning my head around all the time. But when you're doing moving left or right, you can, like with a car, you don't rely just on your mirror. Sometimes you turn your head to see what's happening to left or the right. Turn your head to left or right to see what's happening, as well as use the mirror. The mirror is helpful, but doesn't replace being able to turn your head. Yeah, as Ellen mentioned, mirror doesn't replace looking over your shoulder. So shoulder check is very important. Something about WD-40. WD-40 is mostly a solvent, not a lubricant. So it doesn't stay around very well. It washes off very quickly or evaporates. So yeah.
And then Ramesh had a question. I think he accidentally sent a direct message. My wish list is that all major roads have a bike lane like San Thomas Aquino Creek Trail from Homestead North. Will that happen in our lifetime? This is an advocacy and infrastructure question.
Well, actually, so having a completely separate trail next to a major road, that's not going to happen everywhere. But certainly having at least a bike, okay, so on roads that are, say, 20 miles an hour or faster, having a bike lane is a good idea. I mean, up to maybe 25 miles is okay to mix. 15 miles an hour is completely comfortable to mix. With 50 mile an hour speed limit, cars and bikes can just use the same lane. But when cars are going faster than bikes, then having a dedicated bike lane is very advantageous. And when cars go very fast, then it's having a protected bike lane or protected bikeway. And when they go extremely fast at freeway speeds, then having a completely separate facility is awesome. And I see one person showing an iron out on their video there. That to reduce rust. So next to freeways is a great place to put a completely separate bike facility. Now, actually, we'll get to freeway riding when I get, that's a more advanced topic that we will get to as part of this presentation. So I'm going to leave that for later. I'll keep going here. So hazards of bicycling. They've got a bunch of other things to do. Any other questions we need to answer right now, Lenny, or can I keep going? Because I realize I'm running a little behind.
Yeah, last one. When is it okay to bike on a regular car lane that is not marked to be shared with bikes? And I think the answer is all the time.
Yeah, whenever you need to. You can use a regular, it's always legal, unless bikes are explicitly prohibited, like in a freeway situation where bikes are said no bikes. Otherwise, you can typically take the lane whenever you need to on any road. But it takes experience to know when you need to versus when you can actually be on the side, which, yeah, we've already talked about some. Okay, so hazards of bicycling. Some risky behaviors: riding on sidewalks, riding the wrong way against traffic is one of the most frequent causes of bike crashes. Don't ride against traffic on the wrong way, ride with traffic. Ignoring stop signs and traffic signals, also very risky behavior. Pay attention to the traffic signals. Now there is actually, for stop signs, there is a bill called the Safety Stop Bill, which would allow bicycles to treat stop signs as yields. Because a lot of times in the bike routes, there's not much traffic. And it's actually, you want to minimize the amount of time that a bicyclist is in the intersection, because in the intersection itself is a very dangerous place to be because you've got cross traffic. The Safety Stop Bill would allow cyclists, they need to, if there's a car at the stop sign, they need to yield like you would normally yield at a stop sign, but it would allow cyclists to be going very slowly, not completely come to a dead stop before they have to start again. It's a practical thing. And most cyclists in California currently do treat most stop signs as yield. They don't actually come to complete stop, although some cyclists do complete stop everywhere. Right now, it is the law. You have to come to complete stop at stop signs in California. So that's what we have to do during our class. But we'd like to see that change with the Safety Stop Bill. But then you need to be an adult cyclist to know when it is okay to be doing a rolling stop versus a complete stop. Failing to yield when turning is something motorists do all the time to cyclists who are proceeding correctly in their path. So you need to watch out. So these are all risky behaviors, which we're going to cover in a little bit in the video coming up. So there's 5 layers of safety. First of all, control your bike. Don't fall over, collide with others. That's the most important part, and maintain control of your bike. That's why sometimes it's okay not to signal, because you want to make sure you maintain control of your bike. Second, obey the law and don't cause crashes yourself. A lot of crashes are caused by cyclists who make unsafe decisions. Follow the traffic laws, obey signs and signals, signal whenever you can to signal where you're going so you have clear communication. Positioning, use positioning to discourage other people's mistakes. These are all preventive measures. By positioning your bike in the right spot, you'll make it less likely a motorist will make an unsafe decision around you. So use your lane position to tell drivers where you're going and discourage right hooks and left crosses or other bad movements. So this will, these 3 layers can avoid 90% of the crashes: controlling your bike, obeying the law, and using the proper lane positioning. Okay, then there are some, when all else fails and you're faced with a critical situation, there are some maneuvers you can learn to do, which we do in part 2, on how to avoid or limit the damage if you face a crash. And the final layer of safety is passive safety, where you're wearing a helmet, you're wearing gloves to protect you. If you do get in a crash, your head's protected, your hands are protected. So I do wear bicycling gloves all the time when I ride a bike, and I wear a helmet every time when I ride a bike, because I'm typically riding long distances whenever I'm riding a bike. So use those to protect you and survive a crash. So 5 layers of safety. Some types of hazards to watch out for. Metal surfaces are very dangerous for a bike because if they're slipperier, and if they're wet, they're super slippery. Also watch for pavement joints or things, edges that are parallel to your direction of travel. That's why we do not ride in the gutter, because between the gutter that's often concrete and the asphalt, often little ridges show up. And one of my friends who's on the Sunnyvale Bicycle Pedestrian Commission along with me, he's a chair, that was where he got his most serious crash. He was riding in the gutter, there was a lip edge, and he maneuvered right or left and didn't see that edge. He fell down, broke his arm because that edge caught his tire and wiped him out. So dooring, also watch out for doors, as we've discussed. Ride 5 feet away from a door, from a parked car. Visibility, depending on time of day, just be as visible as you can. Wear bright clothing, use lights, watch out for objects in the roads, and pay attention to the weather. Okay, got another review and questions, but I want to keep rolling here because I've got a lot of slides still to go through. So we've got some intermediate level stuff. Riding in a group. Now, Almana Cycle Touring Club has a really extensive multi-session thing they call their academy. They learn how to ride properly in a group. There's a lot of advanced techniques when you're riding in a group. You talk to people, you say stopping, you say left, right, you talk to people, you point out issues around you so that you have good communication with everyone you're riding with. When you're sharing paths and trails, there's an etiquette to sharing a path and trail where with pedestrians, you say on your left, you ring your bell, you let people know that you're there. We'll talk about riding in inclement weather, talk about riding at night and rural road riding. So we'll get into this a little bit more. So let's see. Hopefully I've got some slides here. Go to Bike League Outdoor, ride with your local clubs. Find what local club there's. Almana Cycle Touring Club, there's Western Wheelers, there's others. They will help teach you how to ride in groups and ride in your area. Okay, so riding with a group. So we've talked, I just mentioned this, on your left, when you're passing someone else, verbalize it. Tell them you're passing on your left because they may not be looking behind them and then you don't want to surprise them. You can also say when you're riding in a group, if you see a hole in front of you, say hole or bump. You can also point to them as you're going over them so that other people, cyclists behind you will see it. They'll see you pointing at something on the ground and they'll avoid riding over that thing that you happen to see ahead of them. Something else is when you're riding in a group, you can say car back to give everyone a heads up that there's a car behind you that's trying to pass. You may or may not at that point want to maneuver further to the right to let the car pass. It depends on the situation. If you need to own the lane, keep the lane. Don't move far to the right because someone said car back, but be aware there's a car waiting. So actually riding 2x2 can make it easier for cars to pass you because if you're riding single file with 50 cyclists, that's a lot of people to have to pass if you're all taking the lane. But if you're riding 2x2 or even 3 by side, which might be the most you want to ride side by side because it limits your maneuvering room, then you can shorten up the amount of space necessary for a car to pass the whole group of cyclists. Car up gives people heads up if they are passing people behind that there's a car coming around the turn, say, so the car coming at you. Slowing or stopping, another verbal signal, very useful to use when you're riding in a group to give people a heads up about what's happening and that you're slowing. And you could also be using your hand signal to tell people that you're slowing. So those are important verbal cues to give when you're riding in a group. Multi-use paths, you want to be super courteous. Pedestrians have the right of way on multi-use paths. You are basically the car, as it were, on the multi-use path because it's a faster vehicle. You need to yield to the slower one, the pedestrians. Know the rules of your trail. Know the speed limit. A lot of trails have like a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. And that's generally a good rule of thumb for most trails is to be 50 miles an hour slower in most trails. When you pass someone slower, pass on their left and say passing on your left or just on your left. Ring your bell so that people aren't surprised, either slow cyclists or pedestrians. Now, when I say on your left, some pedestrians don't understand the etiquette on trails also. And they may actually move left in front of you. So just be prepared for that even if you communicate, the people ahead of you may not fully understand what you're trying to say. Ringing your bell is generally a very polite way rather than having to yell at people. And I have a bell on my bikes so that I ring them so people know that I'm coming. Be super cautious at intersections and pay attention to what cross traffic is happening. Be predictable. Ride in as straight a line as you can and just don't do sudden movements to left or right because you may not know that there's a cyclist who didn't know to say ring their bell or say passing on your left. You may be pulling in front of them suddenly. Do not use more than half the width of the trail. One of the worst things that some people, runners or cyclists, are like right in the middle of the trail that's kind of narrow and they should be on the right, just like you want to be on the right side of the road because and then the worst one is when they're wearing headphones, they're running right in the middle and their arms are flailing out. They aren't leaving you much room to pass. That really annoys people when they're trying to go in the opposite, they're trying to pass someone ahead of them. So use up the right amount of trail and be courteous on the trail. In inclement weather, so riding in the heat, you want to have a lot of water on your bike. So you can stay hydrated, wear clothing that wicks well and allows your sweat to evaporate. This is where you start wearing regular bike clothing. In cold weather, lots of layers. So you can take them on or off. So the worst thing you can have happen is you get hot and sweaty in cold weather, and then it gets colder, and then your wet clothing gets colder. You want to stay dry in cold weather. When riding in the rain, this person is an example of wearing a rain cape, which I love wearing a rain cape because it allows a lot of air circulation underneath. And these bicycle rain capes are designed so they form a really taut tent over you. We've got thumb loops, they hook over the front of your handlebars or your hands are holding them out. And there's often a seat loop so that when you're riding in the riding position, it forms sort of a cowling around you that's very taut and actually fairly, it lets wind go through and around you and circulates well so you can stay dry underneath. And then I typically have fenders to keep rain from underneath splattering up on me when I'm riding, like when I'm bike touring. Because when I'm bike touring, even during the rain, I'm generating a lot of heat. And I like having air circulation around my body. And a rain cape is very useful for that. Take some practice getting used to. Versus a full rain suit keeps the rain outside of you from hitting you. But then you're generating so much heat and sweat underneath it that I often get wet inside when I'm wearing like pants and a rain jacket. It has to be pretty cold before I put on a full rain jacket and rain pants. Like when it gets like 32 or in the 30s or below, then I may actually be putting on the full rain jacket. But I'm being very careful at venting to make sure I don't trap a lot of moisture underneath me. So riding in rain, I've ridden through thunderstorms, which is one of the riskier things you can do. Just watch out, stay away from lightning, go indoors, be inside when it's lightning. But I have ridden through thunderstorms where it's not lightning right near me but there's pouring rain with a rain cape and been doing just fine. It's actually kind of fun to ride in the rain. Like I'm a kid again, right? Splashing the puddles. Let's see. Okay, night riding. Extremely important to have lights in the front and rear when night riding. I've got my main lights that I use for visibility. I've got backup lights because I ride in the night a lot and I don't want to have one of my batteries go out. So I've got backup lights as well. And I've got flashing lights on my helmet. So I've got lights all over the place. So there's no excuse for anyone not to see me. And as I mentioned earlier, at night when I ride on my bike, I'm more visible at night than during the day because of all my bright lights in every direction. Reflectors, like wearing a vest is super helpful because the big, colorful, big reflectors and size matters. So the more reflective gear you have in all directions, the more likely people are to see you. And people in general, drivers, they do not want to hit you because that's, you're hurting someone else and there's lawsuits involved. So trust that drivers will not hit you. It's extremely, extremely rare that a driver will hit you on purpose. And also note that biking and driving are about the same risk level. But if we got everyone to bike, it would be so safe for everyone because bicyclists typically don't kill other people versus motorists are killing other people all the time. 40,000 people a year die from motor vehicles. Most of those are other motorists, but they do hit pedestrians and cyclists. So again, biking is as safe as driving. They're roughly the same risk level, but if we all biked, we'd save a lot of lives. Night riding, be visible. So ride predictably, have a lot of reflectors, have lights, and you'll be fine. And it's quieter at night. Actually at 3 a.m, which I was riding recently to get to San Jose to do a video interview, dead quiet, no one else around. I took the lane. I was pulling trailers and a lot of other stuff and no traffic around me at all. Okay, rural riding. Typically, there are narrower roads. You need to take the lane. Traffic's moving a lot faster. On rural roads, I've ridden and taken the lane on a road that has 70-mile-an-hour speed limit, but had good traffic engineers are very good at what they do. They make sure that people have visibility. So when you're driving at 70 miles an hour, you have enough time to stop before you hit something in front of you. So when you're taking the lane, I could see that I can see everyone. They can see me. There's no surprises. The speed limits go down and drivers go slower if they've got a lot of turns or they go up and down. The speed limit wouldn't be as high. The traffic engineers have actually, they know their job. They design roads so that people can see and stop in time as it's in the road or something driving slowly. In rural riding, you have to get used to having faster vehicles around you. There's little to no shoulder often on these rural roads. So you do have to take the lane. You have to watch for oncoming traffic. One of the scarier things is on a rural road, when someone ahead of you, 2 cars, one passing the other. And then you have to be ready to like ditch the road, get off it because but that's why actually when I'm riding cross country long distance touring, I got bright flashing lights front and back to make sure that all the cars even during daylight, can see me from a long way off, along with my bright vest. With rural riding, you also have to worry about wind blasts, where people will pass you driving very fast, and particularly with trucks, they can have a big wind blast, which you can throw you to one side, then suck you in after the vehicle goes by. Good getting practice at that. You just have to be polite and tolerant, and trust that, you just have to trust that other people want to be good drivers around you. So give them no excuse, make sure you're visible. And it's a lot of fun to ride the road in the rural areas because there's fewer cars overall, and you can get away from traffic if you pick the right choice of roads. Okay, getting more into the drive chains, gears in the rear. We've talked actually quite a bit about this already. You want to practice smooth shifting. You need to be pedaling to shift, but you don't want to be pressing too hard when you shift, because if you're pressing really hard climbing a hill, you can block your shifting from happening, and or the shifting can be very jerky. You want to make sure you keep your chain well lubricated so that it doesn't make noise and so it moves smoothly, doesn't make sounds. Here it says replace your chain every 1,500 to 2,000 miles. That's, these days with the high quality lubricants and chains, I usually go 5,000 miles before I have to replace my chain. The best way to check your chain is to get a special chain check tool to see if your chain is wearing. In California, you should use generally what's called a dry lube. The dry lube, it's nice because it doesn't get you as messy when you touch the chain. Also, it repels sand and dirt because we're riding in a dry environment. But the dry lube does not work as well when it's raining a lot, because the dry lube will get washed off much more easily. And in a wet environment, you have something called a wet lube. It's stickier, it's more oily and greasy, and it really sticks to the chain, does not get washed off, so it keeps lubricating the chain. But in a dry environment with a lot of dust and dirt around, all the grime sticks to that the wet lube and causes a chain gunk to build up. Also, in a wet lube, the chain's gunkier and greasier, and you touch it and it's just messier. So even when I'm riding in a wet area, I tend to prefer the dry lube. But right after, when I was bike touring across country, after it rained, when I'd ride my bike off, I lube my chain right away, because otherwise it'll start rusting. Versus the wet lube, I wouldn't have to worry about it so much. If I ride in the rain, the lube's still there, it's protecting my chain, all the water is being repelled from it. So when I was in Boston, I used a wet lube, but out here I use a dry lube. Talk to your bike shop about what lube to get. We've got a lot of great chain lubes these days. Okay, now some advanced stuff. Long distance bike touring. When you're riding in a group in a long distance, it really helps a lot to be able to draft behind other people. This is a kind of a specialized skill where you're really close to the rider in front of you, and they can serve as a windbreak. So as a group of you, you can ride with a lot less effort. This is called drafting or pace lining. Also, let's see, you get more practice predicting what's going to happen and shifting before you need to, you absolutely are forced to shift depending on what you're going up or down on. See, I'm running out of time a little bit, so I'm not going to go into too much depth here. There are a lot of good books in bike touring and long distance riding, and I'm in a cycle touring club, Western Wheelers. Just riding with those groups, you can learn more about drafting, pace lining, and shifting. Actually, I see someone comment, Eleni commented, Finish Line's a great lube. With long distance bicycle and touring, you can learn how to ride up and down hills. When riding up a hill, it is often climbing. It's really important to have a good rhythm going up the hill. And sometimes when climbing, I choose to spin faster and stay in my seat and just be pedaling up it. Other times, however, on long climbs, to switch things up, I'll actually be doing stand-up pedaling, where I'll be in a slightly higher gear and I'll actually be out of my seat and stand up pedaling instead of climbing it just like I'd be tromping up a hill. I'm kind of going at about that speed in my pedals. It takes practice to do stand-up pedaling and to shift back and forth between stand-up pedaling and spinning. But it also, getting out of your seat when you're doing long distance bike touring, your rear end is typically the part of you that doesn't want to be just seated all the time when you're doing really long rides. And getting out of your seat and giving it airtime, getting your butt up, can really help your butt last longer, and it makes it much more comfortable. So even when I'm riding flat, sometimes I'll shift into a really high gear on a flat road and start doing some stand-up pedaling. It's also called honking, where I'm in a super high gear and I'm pedaling more slowly, but it gets my butt up out of the seat and gives me more, changes my body position. It's generally more athletic to be doing stand-up pedaling than sitting and spinning. So you have to get to a particular fitness level, but it's great to vary up how your techniques so you can exercise different muscles in different ways and give your different muscles exercise. Descending, when you're descending a steep road, it's really important to make sure that your inside pedal is up so you don't catch it on the ground. Like when you take a sharp turn, sometimes with bikes, you can pedal through some turns, but sometimes you're taking such sharp turns, you want your outside pedal to be down and your inside pedal to be up so you can take the turn without the pedal hitting the ground to make a sharp turn. Let's see. Other things to pay attention to. Some people like going downhill fast. I like going downhill fast. Other people are super cautious. My wife is super cautious going downhill. You know, when you're going downhill slower, you tend to use the brakes more. If you are using the brakes more on descending, if you have rim brakes, you need to pay more attention to how hot your brakes are getting going down a really big descent, because you can actually overheat your rims and you can actually blow out your tube if you're not paying attention. So you can actually use both brakes judiciously, front and back, and sometimes alternating brakes to let one rim cool down while the other one heats up. Disc brakes are awesome for going downhill because you don't have to worry about them getting too hot because they'll generally work at all temperatures. But with rim brakes, since your tube is right there, you have to pay attention to how you're controlling your speed. And when you're bike touring, you typically have a heavy load on your bike as well as yourself. So you want to pay attention to how you're using your brakes and controlling your speed and paying attention to the speed limit also. Descending and the hills around here, I'll often be descending as fast as the car is descending. So I'll be with traffic and taking the lane. By the way, the fastest I've yet recorded myself, I have gone 55 miles an hour going down a big mountain outside of San Diego with a fully loaded bike in atrocious winds and taking the whole lane because I was going down a really fast road. As you descending, you may want to practice leaning into your turns, as I mentioned, with your pedal up on the outside pedal down, inside pedal up. Let's see, I'm generally keeping when descending, my hands are really near my brakes at all times. I'm often in the drops, both to streamline me, but also to give me more. If I'm on top of the hood braking, I can't get full force on the levers. So I'm typically down in my drops to make sure I can get my full force of my hands on my brakes so I can stop fully. I'm also paying very close attention to what is happening well ahead of me so I can avoid road debris and other surface defects, because that really sucks to hit a rock when you're descending fast. That can cause a crash. Something else to pay attention to when descending, especially with a heavily loaded bike, is shimmy. You want to make sure your bike is feeling stable. It's one of the reasons my current touring bike has become my commuting bike, and I've got a different touring bike that has a firmer, it just handles better under load at high speeds than my older touring bike. Let's see. There's lots of other tips here. I'm going to keep going because I'm starting to run out of time. Limited access highways, pay attention to your state law. You need to ride in the shoulder. Watch for debris. Across large parts of California, New Mexico, and Arizona, when I was crossing the country, I did actually ride in interstates, because certain places in Wyoming also, there are no other roads to go on for where you need to go. So you can ride on the shoulder. That shoulder often actually is very safe to be because they're huge, wide shoulders. They're like a big, wide lane, and they've got those rumble strips separating you from the fast travel lane. Still, even there, large trucks going 70, 80 miles an hour can create huge wind blasts you have to watch out for. Also, riding on the shoulder of these big interstates, trucks, I hate trucks that have their tires break. They create these little short wires from broken tires. And those little short wires created 5 of the 6 flats I went going across the country the last time. And they just pile up on shoulders. So riding on an interstate shoulder, it's noisy, it's annoying. There's a lot of little short, sharp wires that cause flats a lot. Yeah. And just pay attention to the law. Again, where there's no other roads, it is legal to ride on limited access highways, but then at certain times it'll say you have to get off the road because there's another parallel road that you can ride on. And then you can't legally ride on the interstate, you have to pull onto the side road. You just have to pay attention to the signs and be prepared. Whoops. Okay, now these hazard avoidance maneuvers that I'm going to go through quickly, we practice these a lot in the on-bike piece. There's a rock dodge, avoidance weave, quick stop, and instant turn. The rock dodge is the one thing I use actually quite a bit. Where you're riding straight, you'll see a rock in front of you. Just quickly turn your wheel left and then turn your wheel right, and your bike will actually maneuver around the rock and you won't hit it. and you like dodge it. It's kind of cool. There's no lane, you continue straight on in the bike. It's a good technique to practice, and we cover it in part 2. This is a theory, but you actually do it for real when we do the on-bike piece. The avoidance weave is just swooping around a lot of debris that you may see on the road, and that just takes practice, where you sort of get in the rhythm to dodge a lot of rocks or a lot of glass, whatever you're seeing in front of you. We practice that again on bike. Here, got a little video for some common crash techniques before I go to the next section.
Knowing the most common types of crashes between drivers and cyclists is the first step to avoiding them. Being a safe driver means driving cautiously. The 4 most common types of crashes that occur between drivers and people on bikes are the left hook, the right hook, overtaking, and dooring. Let's discuss these common crashes and discuss simple ways to avoid them. In the left hook, a driver fails to yield to an oncoming cyclist as the driver turns left through an intersection. Often, the left hook is the result of a failure by the driver to actively see the person on a bike who is clearly visible. Or the driver underestimates the speed of the cyclist and turns left without giving the cyclist enough space. People on bikes can often be traveling at the same speed as motorized traffic. Do not assume a person on a bike is traveling slow. A driver can avoid a left hook crash by slowing down, yielding to oncoming traffic, using a turn signal, scanning the entire intersection, and waiting until it is safe to proceed. The right hook is when a driver passes a person biking in the same direction as them and then turns right into the path of the person on a bike. A driver can avoid the right hook crash by slowing down and staying behind the person biking. Drivers often misjudge the speed of cyclists, which can lead to serious crashes. A driver can avoid the right hook crash by using your right turn signal, checking your rear view and side mirrors, and turning your head to check blind spots. It is always safer to stay behind a bicyclist and wait until they pass through the intersection to execute your right turn.
And as noted earlier, a driver is supposed to merge into the bike lane in California before taking a right turn. So remember that as a driver.
One of the deadliest crashes for people biking is when a driver overtakes them. An overtaking crash is when a driver attempts to pass a person biking and does not leave enough room between the car and the person on a bike. By passing a person on a bike too closely, the driver may startle them, or worse, the driver may hit the person and cause a serious crash. Keep in mind that in most states, drivers are allowed to cross over a double yellow line in order to safely pass a bicyclist when there is no oncoming traffic. A driver can avoid an overtaking crash, which could kill someone, by slowing down and waiting until it is safe to pass, putting a car's width of space between you and the person on a bike, and only passing when the road ahead and oncoming traffic is clear so that you may give the person on a bike at least 5 feet of space. Finally, dooring is another easily avoidable crash. Dooring is a term to describe a driver or passenger opening their car door into the path of an oncoming person biking. The consequences can be severe, either hitting the person on a bike or causing them to swerve into traffic behind them. Before opening your car door, look over your shoulder closest to the door and check your rear view and side mirror to make sure there aren't people on bikes, scooters, or other vehicles coming up behind you. Open your door slowly with caution. As a driver, it is your responsibility to make sure it is clear before opening your door. Thanks for sharing the road.
So those are all driver tips, but those are keys to cyclists and how to avoid those. So like dooring, just ride away from the car door so you don't have to be worrying about dooring. Okay, now we're going to go through some maneuvers that can avoid the right hook and left hook.
Knowing the most common types.
So there's a thing called the quick stop, which you can sometimes use to do like an emergency super quick stop to avoid hitting someone who's doing a right hook or left hook in front of you, where you use both front and rear brakes to brake really firmly. You can slide your body back to keep it low. And it takes a lot of practice to get this done right. And we do a lot of this as part of Smart Cycling Part 2, where we learn to practice the quick stop and how to use it correctly. So we can stop as fast as possible to avoid hitting something in an emergency situation. There's also the instant turn, which takes a lot of practice to get right, where you can do a super quick turn, typically to the right, to avoid a right hook. So you actually, instead of running into the person who's doing the right hook, you actually turn on the inside of them to avoid it. And to do the instant turn, you actually turn in the opposite direction from when you turn the handlebars in the opposite direction of where you want to turn, so that you get your bike leaning over in the correct direction, and then you turn the opposite way to actually finish the turn. It feels very unnatural, it requires a lot of practice. Again, we'll do this as part of Smart Cycling Part 2, the instant turn, because talking about it just does not work well. You need to actually experience it and do it, and you'll find out that you can turn super fast if you know the right technique. For smart cycling resources, online videos, quick tip guide and tips, we have bikeleague.org/rightsmart, as actually this happened earlier also in this presentation. There are a bunch of league resources, the Connect Locally map, community and state report cards, advocate tools on the Bike League site, so you can read about where you're maybe biking or your community, and encourage people to become bicycle friendly communities. We've got a lot of them in this area. SVBC has a lot of resources on our website, bikesiliconvalley.org. We've got a bunch of videos. You've got the other advice, how to carry a lot of stuff on your bike. Bicycle safety tips at bikesiliconvalley.org/resources, like getting started. Go there, check them out. Next steps for you. It's Bike to Wherever Days and Bike Month right now. Please pledge to ride. And in the chat, if you've pledged to ride, say, I've pledged. And if you have not pledged to ride, go to bikesiliconvalley.org/P2R and pledge today. Get signed up. You get chances to win prizes. You can then pick up your free bike bag at an Energizer station on Bike to Wherever Days, which is the 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd in the later half of May. We're also doing random drawings. I've just done the first random drawing, and I've notified 3 lucky people of the prizes they're winning. We have got locks, we've got lights, we've got jerseys. We're giving out all sorts of stuff, but you've got to pledge to ride to be eligible to win one of these random drawings. And when you're pledging to ride, you can join SVBC with a discount code. It's only if you use BikeJoy 2022 on the pledge to ride form, where it says you can join to be a member. It's only $20 to be a member instead of the normal $35. Now, if you have $35 extra, join at $35. Don't use the discount code. But if you want to become a member more cheaply right now, use the discount code and join at our pledge to ride page. And if you want to take part 2 of Smart Cycling, go to bikesiliconvalley.org/ED. And you will get to our full training schedule, so you can sign up to take a Smart Cycling Part 2 when it's convenient for you, different dates, different locations. Sign up, because together we can make Silicon Valley a better place to ride and bike and save our world at the same time, by all of us getting to be better bicyclists and getting everyone to ride. Okay, so questions. I'm done with all my slides. Yay! I'm going to turn off this so that everyone can see everyone, and I will turn off my spotlight also. Let's see, where remove spotlight. There we go. Now we're all equal. We all talk. We can ask questions and what's happening. Okay, so looks like I'm pretty much on time. I've got another 15 minutes left for questions. I've got Eleni and we've got a lot of bicycling experience between the two of us. So whatever your questions are, fire them off. We also, during the Smart Cycling Part 2, we can also go into more depth in a lot of different questions while you're getting practice. And there, again, you'll have a great instructor to student ratio. We have 4 students for every instructor. And with Smart Cycling Part 2, we practice everything we've talked, just about everything we've talked about. Okay, shoot, give me your hardest question. What do you want to know about biking? And Lenny and I will try to answer you. Lenny, do we have anything lined up that we need to answer?
Yep, a couple questions. I was gonna give people a chance to stretch their own vocal cords and ask their own questions.
Yep. Raise your hand if you want to raise actually a question verbally. Okay, Lenny, what in the chat should we address first while people thinking about their question and raising their hands?
Okay, one question. Isn't there a California state law passed a few years ago where it's illegal for drivers to turn right with the biker within 6 feet of the right lane? Cars within 6 feet have to wait for the biker to turn or go straight.
I'm not aware of a specific law, as Lenny points out, about that. But I mean, generally, that's a good idea to make sure there's enough space. But people are supposed to yield to people that are going in through traffic. They're not supposed to cut people off in general. So that's just dangerous driving behavior. So it is illegal, but there's not a specific law that I know of that's worded this way.
that was me who asked the question, Tim. I don't recall exactly, the distance, but I remember voting for something like this.
The law
And it might have been 5 or 6 years ago.
6 or maybe more years ago, there was a 3-foot passing law that
That's
said
what it was then.
motorists must have 3 feet between them and a bicyclist whenever passing a bicyclist. There's a proposal to actually get a little more aggressive about that. Other states, some are 4, some are 5 feet. In general, the best etiquette is to be 6 feet or more whenever you're passing a bicyclist, because 3 feet is actually still feeling pretty close. The new law that's up right now in front of the legislature is that cars passing a bicyclist in a lane must completely switch lanes, not try to even share a part of the lane with them, which would tend to shave into that 3 feet space. But actually, like they would with a car, when you pass another car, you need to shift over a whole lane and pass the car. You don't try to squeeze by them in the same lane. And then that'd be the same thing for bikes. That's a law currently in front of the legislature right now. If you want to learn more about those laws that are lined up, calbike.org has a great page on all the laws. And there's a lot of them right now lined up to improve cycling in California. And if you can, not only become a member of the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition for our local, because the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition focuses on our cities and county level infrastructure here and laws here. CalBike focuses on laws at the state level, and League of American Bicyclists focuses on laws and infrastructure at the national level. We get a lot of our funding at the state and the national level that comes down to the local level. But Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, we've got enough, our hands full, just focusing on the stuff that's happening locally. Okay, so there's a pitch for CalBike and for League of American Bicyclists. You can join the right organization and pay attention to all 3 levels. They all work together and all important. What's up next, Eleni? Anything else in the chat that I haven't paid attention to?
Some stuff is trickling in as we go. I did drop in the link for the Smart Cycling too. Ted mentioned biketeacher.com. I met him at Viva Calle, and some friends and I were on a group ride, and one of his staff members actually joined us partway through. So he all of a sudden has exploded into my consciousness, but he's been at this for, he said, 5 or 7 years. So he's another great resource in San Jose.
Is he the one who teaches bike repair? Is that the bike? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been drooling over his class listing. It's not free, but supposedly he can teach you up to 80 hours worth of bike repair material and give you a certificate.
Cool. We should add, we've got on our educational page toward the bottom, we've got a list of all of the bike educational resources and other firms that do teaching. I don't think we've got him there listed yet. We should add him, because learning all the different spots where you get bicycle education is really, really helpful.
Yeah, I think his name is Arthur.
Yeah. It said on his site that it's like he sets it up like a real shop, and you come in and he has the tools ready, the bike that needs to be fixed, and sounds ideal for really learning how to fix your own bike.
And we do actually, as part of this VTA educational work series, we have some basic bike maintenance workshops. There's one coming up. I think it's fully booked at the moment, but you get on the waiting list in case someone doesn't show. And this last one, we thought we had 20 people. Only 2 people showed up in person, and we had all this equipment set up. And it was really a bummer for us, because we thought we had a full house, and then people didn't show up. And that class is very expensive to run. So that was a lot of taxpayer money that went up the chute there. Well, it funded the Community Cycles. They were our partner that's teaching these classes. So if you sign up for one of our classes, especially part 2 of Smart Cycling and our bike maintenance class, make sure you show up to the class, because they're very expensive. We got a lot of instructors lined up and a lot of equipment laid out to make sure that these classes are worthwhile. Okay.
Kartike asked, what are some of the local bike riding groups to learn about riding in a group? The ones that Tim kept mentioning were Almaden Cycle Touring Club and Western Wheelers. I can get their URLs right now.
Yep. And Almaden Cycle Touring Club.
There are also much more casual groups. Like we have our social rides that we run on first Saturdays every month. You can find those on SVBC's Eventbrite. And then there's also groups like Bike Party, which just dig up a friend and come out and ride in a huge, bright, loud group. A lot of fun.
Yes, actually, just riding with other groups gives you more experience about riding with groups, and you see how the etiquette works just by riding with them. Great learning opportunity and a lot of fun. And Bike Party, it's a moving dance party, so you get to dance and bike with lights with a big crowd. It's a blast. Okay, I see. Mr. Barricade on TikTok, and he spoke at the California Bike Conference we were at recently too. Mr. Barricade.
Edith has her hand raised as well.
Someone has their hand raised. Okay, Edith, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
I was just wondering, what's the safest way to carry stuff on a bike? Is it in a backpack or in the front of your bike or on the back of your bike?
Okay, so backpacks are handy, but you can get sweaty in a backpack. But the backpacks are quite fine. They're fine, and as long as they're on your back and not hanging on just one arm. So as long as they're sturdy and not swinging around, backpacks are great. Carrying stuff in your hands on the handlebars, very dangerous because they're swinging around and then catching the wheel and cause you to fall. Don't carry stuff in your hands when you're on your bike in general. A front basket can be great for lighter loads. Heavier stuff generally is in the back, not on the front. Trailers. I go to carrying on our website. If you look in resources, carrying things by bike, there's a whole page on how to carry things by bike at different load levels. I often carry more with my bike than you can carry in your car. Yep. So, but I have bike trailers that help me on that. Also, cargo bikes are another option, little pricier, but they can be a very fast and efficient option, more specialized. I just use regular bikes to pull my bike trailers. And yeah, you'd be amazed at how much volume-wise I can carry way more. I've actually moved about 13 bikes with my bike. So think about putting 13 bikes in most vehicles. It's not going to fit unless you pickup trucks, maybe. If you have a moving van, okay, moving van, U-Haul, they can carry more than I can. But otherwise, with a normal vehicle, I don't need a car for moving most of the stuff that I haul.
Tim, we have a great question. Maria is asking, I'm a pretty newbie to biking. Do you think that the Part 2 class will be okay for me to join?
Yeah. We have a lot of instructors, so we can adjust it now. We say newbie to biking. So the two things you need to be able to do before taking the smart cycling class, you need to be able to ride in a straight line and look over your shoulder. That's extremely important. And you need to be able to ride with one hand. So if you can do those two things, you can take smart cycling Part 2. You need to be able to ride with one hand because we need to use the other hand to signal, right? Because if we can't, and also it helps to be able to riding with the left hand and grabbing the water bottle with the right hand. I can ride with either hand just fine. No need to ride with no hands. We don't bother teaching that. And but you need to ride with one hand at a time. So you can use the other hand to either signal or grab something or stuff like that. So if you can ride with one hand, and if you can ride in generally a straight line while looking over your shoulder, you're good to go to take the Part 2 smart cycling class.
Tim, I don't know if this is actually written into the League of American Bicyclists curriculum or qualifications, but I would say also being able to confidently start your bike from a stop as though you're going through an intersection at a red light.
Yeah, although we teach that. We teach that actually as part of smart cycling Part 2. What we'll do is if we have a bunch of beginning cyclists, we'll group them together with one instructor so that instructor can proceed through the steps more slowly and deal with the beginning cyclists. And the more advanced cyclists, we'll group them with an instructor so they can actually do some of the more challenging things. So we can adjust to whoever is showing up. And of course, you do have to be able to ride a bike. We're not going to be able to deal with someone who just cannot ride a bike. We've got you have to learn separately if you can't ride a bike at all. Okay. And the 13 bikes was at one ride. I'll pulled on a couple of trailers behind me. That was at once, at a single time. Any other questions? We're almost at time here. 3 more minutes. Any other questions? Raise your hand, pop them in the chat. And then of course you can ask a lot of questions which come cycling Part 2. So I really hope you will show up for that because doing it for real makes a huge difference. Listening to the theory is great. You sort of got the thoughts in your head, but muscle memory when you're biking is the most important thing. You need to have it basically built into your body so you know what to do. What are these tickets for when I pledge? Do I need a ticket for something? Yes. When you pledge to ride, to get your bag, you flash your ticket either on your phone or a printed out version to get your free bike bag. So that's why we've got tickets for pledge to ride. And it looks like Ramesh is also registered for session 2. Excellent. Do show up because again, we've got a lot of instructors that are showing up to make sure we pull these off. and we don't want to have disappointment, people not showing up when we did all this work to make sure we got a facility, we've got equipment, we've got the instructors all lined up to have a great time with all of you. Any other last questions? Great. Well, thank you so much for sticking with me for 3 hours here. It was fun. I really enjoy instructing, you can probably tell. Thank you, Eleni, for helping me out and watching the chat. I really appreciate that. The more people we get to bike, the better. So encourage all of your friends to bike, get them to join the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, encourage them to join you at these classes. It's more fun to bike with friends. And email to contact us at I'm tim@bikesiliconvalley.org. We'll be sending a follow-up email also that'll have the links that we shared in the presentation. We'll put this recording up as soon as we can. And yes, thank you, Eleni, for putting that in the chat, tim@bikesiliconvalley.org. Or you can also email a bunch of us all together at ED for education, ed@bikesiliconvalley.org. That goes to Raul and other of our instructors, Eleni and me, all at the same time. And is our you'll see that on the bicycle education page we have on our website. So thank you all, and I hope you have a good evening, because we're at 9 o'clock now. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming, everyone. Good night.
Making sure everyone clicks off here. So Eleni, that was fun. That was actually the right, for this smart cycling part one.
Yeah.
Much better. I mean, I felt a little compressed when I did this for the bicycling basics. Also, I didn't have a lot of the videos keyed in as well. This was a much more comfortable pace to actually cover things in the appropriate depths and talk about stuff appropriately. I hope you had a good time.
I did. I think it went really well. And I'm glad that I got to observe you teaching so I can know some of the other pointers.
I'm super, super happy that League of American Bicyclists released those videos just in the nick of time, because doing this
those videos were
they're great videos.
Updated videos are really nice. Yeah.
Updated videos. And just being a talking head just with slides, it just doesn't do the material. Showing it is really important. So those videos really help, which if we did this in a classroom session, we can do more showing in person, but online, it's just really hard. Oh, you got the recording also.
Oh, that's right. Huh.